The spaceship pierced the darkness of the cosmos, leaving behind a bright mark. His captain, young S.E. Ran, clearly watched the coordinates. Her assistant was sure that they would soon see the planet they needed. On the horizon, the dead Earth was already visible, a planet that once abounded in life. Now she's only burnt ruins covered with ash and faults. Among the myriads of the stars of S.E. Ren from the ship stared at the desert landscapes. Life once boiled there, and that was what seemed strange to Robert. He was a scientist, but even he did not understand how someone could live on this planet. Yes, and a senior member of the Black Blood gang. The Earth was without oxygen and was completely saturated with radiation, and Robert looked uncertainly at the captain. But her evil gaze immediately betrayed him confidence, especially since it was information from Hao Moon. It was the same hunter who penetrated the main system of the beggar sect. But the captain decided to ask the assistant's Song Ja. But she was also categorical. If the criminal hid here, then he definitely decided to reduce his life. A small concentration of oxygen in 23% and the level of radiation of 87 zverts are ideal for instant destruction. However, there you can survive with first-class radiation protection and powerful internal energy accumulation. Then, in the best case, on Earth you can hold out for about 6 hours. Then the captain turned to Robert and asked if he was ready to go down and risk his life. The man hesitated, not believing that it was so dangerous because they could not find anything. He panicked throughout the ship, but Song Ja assured that there was definitely life on the planet. The ship landed with a bang on a charred surface. In the past, place in these coordinates was called Mount Tai. Siren and Robert left the ship with protective masks on their faces. Song Ja explained that this place is the old people from a combat alliance called the Legendary Sanctuary. Hence the name of Mount Tai. However, S.E. Rand saw only a landfill around. Why did these old people from the alliance not bring their sacred place to the strands? But Robert replied that they were only chatting, but they would not do what would not bring them money. Talking about the large allocated and stolen budget, the team reached the point. Robert stared at the empty gate standing in front of them without removing that they forgot here. But S.E. Ren stared at the soil underfoot and realized that the point is right here. Crouching, she felt the surface and decided that she needed to get down. Robert looked at his partner in surprise and asked what she was going to do. But S.E. Ren understood that whatever was under them, it was alive. Therefore, she activated internal energy accumulation, alternative mana in films. And then she sent strength to the ground to create a tunnel. The girl knew that she would suffocate if she had buried her so deeply. However, her power did its job and she was able to break through the passage. All the sword land fell on a disgruntled Robert. Only the hair stuck out of the sand, and the voice was heard, asking him to warn him the next time. Siren awkwardly looked at his friend and decided to help him. So the two of them found themselves at a huge sand well. The captain in the headphone turned to Song Ja and asked if she saw signs of life. She replied that she had noticed the creature unconscious, but still alive. She also said that she sees a very large space below. Robert looked at the captain and offered to take an electronic staircase. But he did not even have time to finish the proposal, as S.E. Ren rushed and jumped down. Robert hopefully looked after the reckless girl, but he had no choice but to jump after her. When he decided and was below, the captain was already heading deeper into the gorge. Very soon, they reached huge, beautiful doors. They had an inscription that stated that humanity imprisoned the creature with the great dharma of esoteric teachings, and if someone tries to wake him up, then they will immediately overtake the destruction. However, the inscription was in an ancient language, and the captain asked Song Ja to translate it. The girl replied that in this language they spoke about 2,000 years ago, and, in short, it says not to open if you do not want to die. Robert panicked, but S.E. Ren said that it was strange to write threats in a language that no one would understand. But Robert definitely did not want to face the criminal, and looked uncertainly at the captain. But she said that this is a good sign if they threatened directly from the threshold, and went inside. After all, it is threats and warnings that indicate that there is something worthwhile inside. Then the girl pushed the door, entered the room, and was surprised. Before her and Robert sat a strange, hairy creature. It was in the lotus position on the altar, to which the staircase led. Robert did not understand what was in front of them, like a person, but very strange. And the captain was not scared by this. She was calm. Therefore, without a shadow of fear, she began to climb the stairs. She went to the hairy creature and stared straight into his eyes. But it was so hairy that only the nose stuck out from behind the beard. Robert, in a whisper, asked if S.E. Ren understood who was, because he was here for 2,000 years. It is not clear how it could survive for so much time. But one thing was clear. His hair was exactly 1,000 years ago. Then the captain, without hesitation, decided to touch the hairy monster. She touched the tip of his nose with the tip of her finger. However, at first nothing happened, and the girl already thought that the creature was not living. But suddenly she felt the powerful energy emanating from him. The place of contact sparkled like lightning. Siren pulled out her hand and stared at the monster. His eyes suddenly became visible as the red. The girl, frightened, immediately directed the energy, not him. She put her hand forward, creating a barrier from the energy of the monster. However, the shockwave caused by his awakening was stronger. The monster seemed to be caught fire, creating more and more energy around him. The light was so bright that it was visible on the surface of the earth. And suddenly there was a powerful explosion that created a bright ray rushing into the sky. Oh was so powerful that even Songja noticed him. It looked so terribly that the girl immediately decided to contact the captain. She tried to do this through her sources, but Ren did not answer. She screamed and asked what it was and why did it happen. But in response there was only silence, since everything was destroyed in the altar. Ryan lay, leaning against the wall, not noticing anything in a cloud of dust. But she quickly came to her senses, trying to understand what was with her. Remembering what happened, she opened her eyes in horror. In front of her, she saw Robert lying on the floor. But she became worse when a hairy monster appeared in front of her. It stood opposite the girl and most likely looked at her. His voice pierced the walls with his rudeness, and he asked Ren, who was she? How dared to wake up whether the IOC Jin himself? But the girl looked at him with an incomprehensible look because he spoke an ancient language. She did not know what to answer this terrible monster, so she was silent. The monster thought that it was either some kind of quest or she was really a master of martial arts. Is there really a person who is able to challenge him? Then he asked why the stranger woke him up. The girl got angry with the misunderstanding of the speech of the monster and activated the translation regime. And I realized that due to the fact that she was silent, the monster decided to destroy it. Siran did not even have time to figure out why he wants her death. However, the monster had already raised his hand, wanting to direct his crushing power to the girl. But she finally realized what was happening and was not going to give up. She activated her strength and directed her right into the opponent. This happened several times as her mind defeated fear. The blow behind the blow, she delivered a monster, which was no longer visible behind fire and dust. The walls trembled from these attacks, but soon the energy ended. The girl looked into a dusty haze, trying to understand if she coped. Suddenly, it was warned by the system that the drive was exhausted, since 1.2 out of 1.14 cycles were used. It was necessary to recharge the drive, but there was no time. The monster appeared from the dust, and there was not a single scratch on it. Siren could not believe his eyes. Why did nothing change? The monster recognized the technique of Ren, the divine art of the golden peak of Kvanum and the divine palm of the red fog. Although this is the martial art of the sect of Emi, it has a lot of impurity, which means it was stolen. Therefore, he thought that Ren is a thief who survived due to the tending of burials. Therefore, he rose high the air about to attack. He could not forgive the impudence of some thief because she dared to wake him up. His energy was insanely strong, and even Siren looked at him in fear. But suddenly, her frightened look was replaced by bewilderment. The hairy monster fell to the ground and stopped moving. Siren sat and also did not move, trying to understand what it was now. Then the girl heard the voice of Awake, up Robert, who suggested that the monster was ended. Given the fact that there is no oxygen around and he does not have radiation protection, it can be argued that it did not survive. Although it is worth paying tribute, it lasted a long time. But then there was a voice of Songja from the headphone, and she said that it was still alive. The breath is in order, and the pulse too, it was just exhausted. The body is normal for energy inside its stomach at 0. Siren was surprised at the information received. Is it really the fact that it was terribly hungry? However, now it is in their hands because the captain decided to take him to the ship. Robert was categorically against and wanted to leave the monster on Earth. After all, it can brutalize and become worse than a radiation cockroach. And then this cockroach costs a couple of bucks and no one will buy this crazy monster. But the captain was sure that it was definitely worth the money. The members of her team were perplexed because it is not clear what to pay for, but Ren was convinced that they would receive a lot for this copy. Her friends still did not understand, so the girl decided to explain. She reminded of the most valuable cultural heritage to date. Everyone knew that these were ancient martial arts. And the closer to the original, the more expensive. That is why, judging by the circumstances, This shaggy monster is most likely an ancient master of martial arts. He lived more than 2,000 years ago, in the legendary period, when martial arts were at his peak of development. Even the technique of the lowest class F rank of that era brings at least 10,000 loans. And this monster definitely has a S irang, which means they caught a jackpot. But Robert uncertainly asked what would happen if he wakes up and gets out of here. Shirin said that it was not worth worrying because they bandaged it with a silkworm with heavenly thread. It is used to repair entire ships, so even the heads of the Shoal Order cannot tear it. The same second she changed her opinion. The monster woke up and you also torn these threads for a moment, standing on your feet. It growled, because how miserable tombs of the tombs dared to desecrate him. Robert scaredly backed away while Shan Ren became a combat rack. But then they both stared in surprise at Song Jia. She chose the right tactics and went to the monster with a plate full of food. These were fried sausages that smelled very appetizing. What happened next then secured the guys for a few minutes. The monster sat down and began to eagerly eat all the sausages. It was immediately evident that he was insanely hungry. Saran stared at her friend and asked how she understood what to do. She replied that it had been starving for a very long time. The best that you can give a hungry beast is fried sausages. This is of course good, but what will happen when the sausages end? Oddly enough, the Harry made contact and decided to listen to his kidnappers. He realized that they were not tombs of tombs, but recognized hunters. Siren claimed that they accidentally woke him. But more the Harry was worried that the world where it existed 2,000 years ago was destroyed. Did people crumble each other and decided to live in space? The captain replied that everything had already stabilized and everywhere banned any weapon, including nuclear. This did not affect martial arts, but the monster did not even know what nuclear weapons were. He naively asked what this era is called then. Siren replied that this was already 1105 in the galactic calendar. The stranger still could not believe that people really live in space. Siren explained to him and added that since they woke him, you should be more grateful to him. And the monster roared, not wanting to believe in what he heard, being sure that miserable liars and thieves were lying to him. But for all his indignation, the whole team simply pointed with her fingers in the porthole. The monster calmed down and turned towards the window. What he saw really shocked him. In front of him was a red, lifeless planet, which was his home. Siren did not know how to turn to grandfather, Harry, or monster, but decided to use the word master. She said that this is exactly the place where he once lived and where they found him. The Harry could not believe his eyes and accept this harsh reality. Then S.E. Ren decided to cheer him up and asked if he believes them now. But the monster roared again and said that he would not check it. Is the land on which he stood is round? Siren buried her face in the palm of his palm from the non-education of the master. Robert did not know what to answer at all, but indeed people did not know about the structure of the solar system before. And only now everyone on the ship felt an unpleasant smell. Siren said they would deal with everything later, but now it is better for the master to take a shower and cut his hair. He did not even know what a shower is, but agreed to this adventure. The whole team happily sent him to swim. The stranger spent a very long time in his soul. The captain also provided him with new clothes. Robert asked why they would not leave his hair. As it is, it looked funny for him, but the captain would have cut him off. But Robert explained that he was even scared to look at the body that is over 2,000 years old. But what they saw met all their expectations. A completely young body of the guy came out of the shower. Moreover, it was tightened and sinewy, as if 2,000 years have not passed. The guy wiped his head with a towel, opening his beautiful face. He stared surprised by his comrades and asked if there was something else to eat. But S.E. Ren could not recover from what she expected to see the old man, but almost Jung Jungkook saw. In her opinion, he was even better, but now it was time for them to fly home. The guy looked in surprise at myriades of the stars. He could not believe that he was in heaven, because he used to complain about the limitations of the world. It turned out that he was just incredibly huge. Then he was distracted, as the captain suddenly pinched his cheek. She strictly asked how old the guy was, but only warned that the years of hibernation were not considered. Robert watched this scene with interest, because usually the captain did not behave like that. But she just decided to tell a new companion about their world. Now they have Flu Galaxy. God, they found themselves in the Asteroid Space Tavern. They decided to eat in the Wild Crane Hotel. Songja, who ordered food, watched their new acquaintances in surprise. He was beautiful and perfectly complicated, but she did not understand how much could eat. Robert did not understand this either, but apparently it was affected by the fact that he had been starving for more than 2,000 years. But should he replenish all lost during this time? But judging by his appetite, it was, and soon the guy reached a huge portion. At this time, S.E. Ren decided to conclude a deal with Van 18th. He was the owner of a wild crane and could offer brokers. C. Ran wanted someone very rich, because they had a terribly expensive and valuable object. Van asked how expensive he should be, that even the flaming devil showed up. And the girl asked how much a full collection of martial arts manuscript will cost 2,000 years ago. If we consider that this is the original S rank. Van nervously exhaled smoke and said goodbye to the girl. He did not understand how this is possible, because if so, then these materials are priceless. This was also prompted by his associates, but Van replied that it was a dummy. He will pay 0 loans for such a valuable thing because it is not. If one such book exists, it will cost a whole planet and more. And S.E. Ren claims that she found a stack of such, and she is just a middle-level hunter. Therefore, she was not believed and brought out, so she returned to her team. She told Robert that the conversation went well, and they would certainly contact them when they find a buyer. And while Songjia went beyond the supplies, S.E. Ren stared at the guy from the ground. There were several dozen plates around him, and he exhaled the air heavily. Siren hoped that the guy at least did not eat all this, but Robert replied that it was good that he at least stopped. Siran did not like this, and she would have given this to a glutton, if not for the money. But then the door swung open and everyone stared at the new guests of the restaurant. These were several hunters in a form that everyone knew here. Siren jumped out of place to recognize them in the face. It was definitely people from the Order of the Heavenly Demon. Their head looked around, looking around everyone with the eye where the scanner was. He clearly defined all the people here and showed their names. It was definitely the leader of the platoon Red Wolf, San Jianwei. They were inspectors of the Order of Demons and specialized in surveillance. Most likely, they tracked someone, and this was interested in the Earthling. He had already heard somewhere about the Order of Heavenly Demons. Siren asked how he knows if he slept for the past 2,000 years. But the guy replied that he existed before, but why do people not run away? In his opinion, everyone had to scatter in a panic, but S.E. Ren replied that they were not so terrible, albeit with bazaars. They are still proud that they are the most advanced orthodox sect in the entire universe. For the guy, this turned out to be something distant, unreal, but this happened. However, Zhen Vayu was not interested in a guy, but someone in the crowd. He looked back at all the people here and they were sitting and afraid. But the man's attention was attracted by a strange stranger in a black cap. He went up to him and asked him to raise his head. Seeing his face, Zhen Vayu understood thanks to the scanner that he was wanted on charges of robbery and an attack of the 2nd level. But the man was lucky, because he was not the goal of the order. But right now, he ordered a man to go to a combat alliance and confess. And suddenly he fell silent in half, feeling something strange. Someone's palm fell on his bald head. It was an earthling who seemed insanely satisfied. For him, a pipe dream has just come true, which the young made reality. But everyone around looked at this guy with undisguised amazement, and he looked at Jin Yu praising him for what he did. Then the guy hugged him and said that he had to endure a lot of suffering in order to achieve this position. A man in a black cap in the same way also watched this scene in bewilderment. Zhen Vayu thought that a child with deviations hugged him. Then Robert appeared and said that the guy is absolutely normal. He just has some problems with the skill of social adaptation. Then Zhen Vayu said that this baby was lucky. After all, if his body was the energy of martial art, he would have scattered into pieces. But then something strange happened, and the guy could not understand why Zheng Wei was not moving. Robert, like S.E. Ren, had no idea what was happening. However, the energy seemed to begin to break Jin Yu. Its internal energy drive system, QIOS, was activated. The man used the blood of the demon Wolk. The drive speed was maximum, and he decided to attack. The energy was the strongest and raised everything around when the man raised his hands. Everyone around was frightened that an explosion would happen. Energy filled the entire room. Even members of the order looked with surprise at what was happening. However, nothing happened. Zhen Vayu remained to stand. He did not understand where all his energy went. Siren interrupted the silence, saying that, apparently, the commander is not in the best shape. Then, with the help of a scanner, he stared at the stranger with an angry gaze. He wanted to destroy the guy, but it did not work out. As it did not work out and find out who he was. Paul, energy, martial art were not displayed, and it was not in the database. How can a natural creature with 0 internal energy still be alive? But the guy only grinned and said that it was commendable that the art of the blood of a lower-level demon war is still preserved. But it is a pity that energy and chi are not in harmony, which means training imperfectly so the guy can help fix it. The man got angry because of the boy's self-confidence and again attacked him. He used the demonic claw of the red wolf, the first form, but the guy did not even step back, but only bent, dodging the blow. Then Zhen Vayu decided to repeat his blow, but the guy, as before, continued to easily evade them. Then Zhen Vayu used an explosive wave with a ghostly claw. He flew into the air, and now he certainly could not miss. However, his movements were too slow for the guy. He studied the opponent, but did not see internal energy in him. However, her form was accurate, which allowed him to attack. And now the guy was bored and he grabbed Zhen Wu by his head. Having said that there was enough from him, the guy easily knocked him down. However, this light blow was so strong that it imprinted the hunter on the floor. From such a force, the stone coating cracked, as well as expressions of faces of all around. Everyone was delighted with such a boy's power. This stranger has just beaten one of the strongest warriors. Even S.E. Ren and Robert stared at him in shock, as if they saw for the first time. The guy turned to Zhen Wu and said that he studied art well, but learned everything like a parrot. Real martial art consists not only of imitation, but also for adaptation and adjustment on itself. And now, if he understood, then let him get up and try again. This order tone and attitude towards the warrior, as to an unsuccessful student, even more shocked everyone. Members of the order could not forgive the guy with such a treatment with their leader. That is why they all rushed together to attack the guy. These were the strongest warriors from the Order of Heavenly Demons 32 districts, but they were all amazed at the light blows of the stranger. This was all observed by one important person, Yongru Tech. Robots doctors helped the victims examining their injuries. The territory was cordoned off, and the soldiers were carried away on a stretcher. Yongri Tech, commander of the 32nd district of the Order, was in shock. The elder of the Order said that fortunately, the members of the Order escaped with several bruises, but Ritek certainly could not call it happiness. And even if so, he can't cope against such a small guy. Shame. It is unimaginably that the leader of the Order of the Red Wolf in this state, Elder Zhou Jung-rock, also claimed that this guy was not registered in the War Alliance base. However, his companions were discovered, members of a group of hunters known as S-Devil. Basically, they deal with the criminals of B rank and below under the leadership of S.E. Ren. She is also called a Flaming Devil, and now they flew away from a wild crane. So Ren and Robert stared at the guy opposite them, holding the fork and knife. C. Ren was known as a rather famous hunter, covering both orthodox and unorthodox worlds. The elder asked if they should send a reconnaissance team, but the commander replied that he would deal with everything himself. Such a mood of re-tech strained the elder, but he could not object. As a sign of respect, he bowed to him and left. At this moment, the commander pressed the green button. The screen in front of him was immediately covered with pixels. So Retech contacted his old friend. Soon he answered and smiled at the old acquaintance. The man on the screen immediately guessed that Retech had a request. He was silent for a while, and then, nevertheless, he asked for something. At this time, the unsuspecting hunters flew on the ship. The commander wanted to use the secret group, a green forest. But the team now had other problems. The stranger clearly raised a lot of questions from them. The captain of the ship and Robert looked intensely at the guy. Silence hung in the air and Robert dared to break it. He decided to clarify with the captain if she was afraid of a stranger as he is. But S.E. Ren turned in surprise to him and asked what her friend was talking about. And Robert tried to convey in a panic, although why, everything was already visible. San Jen, like the entire platoon of the Red Wolf, owned the martial arts of a rank. And this earthling scattered them all with one wave. But S.E. Ren could not be convinced because she also did not like those guys. If she fought with them in full force, she would also win. Robert only added that even if he fought for his life, he might have scratched someone. But S.E. Ren knew that the vaunted air ranges for those guys at the very bottom. Therefore, to Robert's surprise, she approached a new acquaintance. Having run into the table, he said 100 they need to talk. The displeased guy clearly wanted to eat more than to chat. Therefore, he replied that he had to eat first. Siren sat opposite him and said that at first they would speak. At first, she strictly asked, finally, what was the name of this guy? Robert immediately ran to her and said that it was better to use more polite appeals. But the girl in anger called the silent guy deaf, but he still did not answer. Songjia brought a new portion of sausages, but the captain said that the guy would not receive them unanswered to the question. Then he simply continued to be silent with displeasure, looking at the sausages. Then Robert merged and said that it was better to give a guy to eat, because even a dog should not be disturbed during food. And then suddenly the guy answered and named his name, Lee Mok Chin. Siren immediately asked who he was and who worked in the past. On this question, Mok Jin preferred to be silent again. But Se Ren did not stop and looked at him intently. Then he replied that he was a heavenly demon, and not just some kind of, but a supreme heavenly demon. This information really surprised Se Ren. If this is not a lie, then they fed the supreme demon with rotten sausages. But there was no time to think about the awkwardness, since there was a siren. It was a warning signal that the goal was discovered. Songja, sitting at the helm, said that someone flew up to them and aimed. Siren realized that it was the order of heavenly demons who had a hunt for them. They could not leave just like that. They killed a platoon of bloody wolves. But Songja said they were not them. A green forest is hunting for them. It was a whole cluster of specially armed ships. A good reward was assigned to the S-Diavel ship. The operation was led by Kim Songbom, a Black Crescent Tiger, the leader of the Galactic Division of 72 of the Fortress of the Green Forest. The captain of the ship asked Bomb's Dream, should they open fire with an electromagnetic explosion? But Bomb's Dream remembered that he was dealing with hunters. The captain confirmed that they mainly monitor the outskirts of the galaxy, and their leader is Se Ren. Sleep Bomb did not understand why the orders were concerned about such an insignificant group as this. Retek then asked for help, and for such a generous reward, Sleep Bomb agreed to help. He asked about the conditions. What should they do when they take the goal? But Retek replied that it was not necessary to capture and ordered to immediately destroy it. Even a dream bomb was surprised at such a radical solution. It was strange and apparently definitely not so simple. Retek is a good specialist in destroying goals, then why did he delegate this task for them? Something here was clearly unclean, as if there was some kind of catch. However, the ship looked completely ordinary, like its team. However, the team was worried that the detachment was drawn to them with the whole crowd. They are bandits, which means they are here most likely, rob them. Robert doubted this because such a huge fleet is definitely not needed to rob the poor. Siren agreed with a friend, but the way he put it did not suit her. In any case, the Green Forest is robbers, and they will overcome them if they become in the way. But Songja said that everything was not so simple, since the whole division was mobilized. Siren realized that their leader was here too and tried to remember his name. And while she named the name of the Black Tiger Kim Songbom, Mok Jin looked in the window in surprise. He did not understand all the danger, since even Bomb's Dream was where with Ren. Robert said that he would have enough one blow to destroy them. Siren was sure that he would cope with him, but Robert offered to give up since they had nothing to lose. But the captain did not lose heart and ordered her instructions to follow. And first it was necessary to attack the enemy ship by the electromagnetic charge, so he will be disabled and then, armed, they will go aboard their ship. You need to let them search the ship if they want. It is better to give them everything they need to survive. Roberta did not understand how it was different from the plan to surrender, but the captain was determined. She also realized that those guys could not attack from their ships thanks to cosmic minimums. She ordered no one to intervene and allow the bandits to pick up everything they need to leave them alone. But then the siren was heard again, and Se Ren ordered to prepare for a blow. But then Songja exclaimed that this is a photon gun. This news shocked the captain, and it was necessary to act decisively. Now she only realized that the enemy wants to destroy them and not rob. It seemed to be some kind of delirium because the whole plan went downhill. This attack violated all space rules and could cause big problems. The capture and immediate utilization would be more correct. But the dream of Bomb, although he understood this, felt something was wrong, so it is better to immediately destroy that ship. They will still transfer all responsibility to the client, so the Order of Heavenly Demons will deal with this himself. And now they started the attack, and Se Ren realized that they could not avoid it. Shields did not work because they sold spare parts to cover life expenses. After these words, Songjase, Ren Ostelbini, is trying to understand what to do. At this time, the photon gun was already charged to the full. Then the dream was ordered to attack the ship. The enemy ships surrounded the crew of hunters and attacked from all sides. Robert simply shouted from fear and understanding that they were ended. Only the IOC Chin looked in surprise at what was happening. And finally, the shots flew to the ship and there was an explosion. Sleep Bomb watched this through the porthole of his ship. He was sure that the goal was destroyed. However, he suddenly saw that something in the scattered smoke. It was a hunter's ship, a whole and unharmed. Moreover, there was not a single scratch on it. As the hunters turned this, it remained even a mystery to them. But it turned out that this was far from the end. A girl appeared on the top of the ship of the Green Forest. Siren was horrified to understand who she was, but Sleep Bomb immediately recognized the 8 of a footmare ghost. It was Elena herself which appeared from nowhere. Surprised, Mok-chin continued, like a child, to watch what was happening. Well, now all the other members of the team joined him. It was a wonderful, stately girl in protective form. She stood right opposite all the ships of the Green Forest. Sleep Bomb did not understand why she was here, but then Elena looked up and stared at the Black Tiger. The captain of the ship said that this is a shield, is a terror formation class, and they will be able to break through it only if they increase the strength of the gun to the maximum. But Sleep Bomb replied that you should not start a space war due to an annoying cockroach. Therefore, he ordered to activate teleportation and disappear. Robert, looking at Elena, noticed that this was a S-rank mercenary and she was very unpredictable. Even the leaders of the largest orders avoid it. But why did she save their ship? If she had not blocked a photon blow, they would have scattered into the atoms. Then a teleported dream appeared next to Elena. He greeted Elena's sister, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time. But she did not answer, and Dream Bomb thought that she had forgotten him. He recalled that he was her 55 younger brother, and they met at his mother's birthday 2 years ago. The girl only answered her brother to fail, and he got angry. Sleep Bomb said that this time he would not appear as a brother, but as a leader of the Fortress of the Green Forest. To tell him, it is equivalent to send the entire order, and he will not be able to accept it. But Elena, too, was not going to accept such negligence in relation to herself. Robert noticed that it seems that the matter is going to the battle. Siren added that it will not be easy, because even for the Green Forest this woman is inviolable. It's hard to cope with Elena alone. And if they are not lucky, her mother, the lioness, will also go to the defense of her daughter. Elena possessed great power, but who is this Mother Levitsa? Sleep Bomb smiled at his sister's anger, because she always resorts to fists to interrupt the conversation. Then he raised his hands up and said that he was surrendering. He really did not want to fight his sister. This was not necessary. He wanted to resolve everything peacefully and just find out the reason. Is this ship really its goal? If their interests coincide, then they will yield to Elena. But the girl again told the man to fail and turned around. He exhaled because he did not expect another result. But why? What moved her when she decided to rebel because of such nonsense? Elena said to transfer the ship to her. Otherwise, they will all die. However, it was a signal to the ship of Captain S.E. Ren. The girl did not understand what she needed. Robert suggested that she also wants to rob them, but what to take from them? Has the captain hid something valuable from them because they really have nothing? Then the girl stared at the IOC Gina, thinking that he knew something. After all, this guy looked absolutely calm. He just looked at Elena, as if knowing what she wanted. Then S.E. Ren asked if he was familiar with this woman. Maybe they had a novel in the past? But Mok-chin replied that this was not because of him. Saran was surprised and even a little happy that this guy and Elena were not scandalous. But then Mok-chin added that this is all because of that child. Everyone looked around but did not notice anything behind themselves. The captain looked at the guy in surprise and asked what he had in mind. Then the IOC Jin told someone to appear in the void, adding that he had nothing to fear. The first couple of seconds nothing happened, but suddenly the girl was distorted from him. With every second in her body, more and more materialized. So in front of the guys was a girl in a black cap and a leather suit. Ran, like Robert, could not believe that someone just appeared on their ship. But then the girl raised completely harmless eyes to them. Ren rushed to the IOC Jin and asked, "What the hell is this?" He replied that she was with them from the hotel and remained invisible. She even hid her breath. This is an advanced level of secrecy, and she developed this martial art. But the Dream of Jia replied that the point is not in technology, but in the pendant on her neck with such an effect. This is a quantum technology and very expensive pleasure. But S.E. Ren was still, it was expensive or not. She was wondering who was in front of her. The frightened girl introduced herself as En Clean Rin. But Say Ren shouted that she did not ask her name. If these ships came for her, then she exposed a mortal danger too. The girl lowered her eyes and said that it was possible. Until she is alive, they will not stop. And then Robert remembered where he had already heard the name of this girl. Siren was delighted that at least someone knew her. Robert said that she could not know her because she is the main vocalist of Pronosian. Siren in the first heard the name of this singer, and a strange name. And Robert explained that she was from the best K-pop group of the galaxy, from the brand new. Robert listened to her songs without stopping and was madly glad that he saw his idol live. She turned out to be even more beautiful than he thought, and was even his countrywoman from Mount Shasan. And while Robert listed all the girls' parameters, the last warning came to them again. Elena gave the crew for 10 minutes to think, and then she will destroy everyone. This news could not but concern the team. Robert looked sympathetically at Rin and asked why they do this with her. The girl was silent, but then Ren was stuck. She did not care why this was happening. She is an uninvited guest and has nothing to do with them. Therefore, the best solution for her is to leave. Robert then rushed to dissuade his captain. But she already clearly decided everything for herself because she was the main one. Grand Rin had no choice but to obey. Robert repeated everything that this was not entirely right. But Ren replied that they could not protect her, especially being under the threat of a green forest. And this is not to say Elena, because if they object, then the fate of this girl will still not change. But there are still how. They will at least survive. So the captain closed the door behind grabbing. In fact, she was also very painful. She did not want to leave a defenseless person alone. But this was the only way for their survival. And suddenly someone's shoulder, Rin, touched someone's hand, stopping her. Oddly enough, it was the IOC Chin who went after her. He looked at the girl and said that he was holding his words. And he already told her not to worry and that she was safe. Seeing the guy shouted when he managed to escape. Robert continued to look at him while the captain opened the door back. But Robert said to wait, because that guy is really strong and even able perhaps to defeat Elena. But Ren answered Robert that he was crazy since she thinks so, because there is outdoor space. Therefore, she ordered Songja to block the entrance. But the girl replied that it was already too late. The captain immediately threw from the porthole to understand what had happened. The doors were open, and the K-pop vocalists, like the guy, were not. Now she certainly had no doubt that the IOC Jin is a crazy person. He just took it and went out with this girl. He helped Rin, and she was grateful, but advised to be more accurate. Her ill-wishers are very strong in martial arts. She looked at the mock Jin, but saw his red eyes. Natural happened. The guy began to choke in outdoor space. Grand Rin asked in surprise why he did not say that he did not have a mask. But Mock Jin has already begun to flounder back to the ship. Grand Rin could not believe that the guy was so recklessly with her into outer space. No one could afford to go to this. This funny picture was observed by Elena from afar. Her face, like her brother's face, was dumbfounded. In open space, 300 degrees, and all internal organs burst from pressure in just 10 seconds. And this guy just took and climbed out without a mask. Despite his strength, it became clear that he could not stand it. His body simply began to freeze from the cold. Soon he no longer had the strength to fight. But suddenly, someone's warm hands touched his face. It was Ren, who flew to the rescue. She activated the oncoming, which allowed to breathe. She began to slow down the guys and ordered him to wake up. And suddenly he asked what Seiren was doing. His eyes were again full of misunderstanding. The captain immediately threw the guy aside and said that, oddly enough, he was alive. Mok Chin replied that she was worried about trifles because he is the supreme being of the sky and earth. Nothing can threaten his life. How can he go down from there? Robert saw that Ren had time and exhaled with relief. JJ replied that she was essentially not having time. Even the greatest master is not able to hold out in space without a shield for more than a minute. And this guy lasted as long as 6 minutes and 30 seconds, and even his organs are in order. He clearly greatly surpassed human limits. Now everyone around was understood, so they were shocked. Siran, looking at Elena, remembered that she was called a combat killer. Her aura is not a joke, she is too strong. In addition, Kim Song-bom was also here. Therefore, she ordered the IOC to Jin not to climb, saying that she would figure it out. She smiled and introduced herself, asking how Elena's things. She was heard about her, but to meet her live, luck. They also probably talk about her, because she is Ren, the leader of the S-Devils, but she did not answer her played friendliness. And while she distracted her attention, Rin, from fear, squeezed her hand to the mock Jin. She immediately came to her senses and blushed with shame. But the guy said that she should not be nervous because he is with her. Grand Rin scaredly replied that that woman is not even a man, a fighting ghost. From an early age, she traveled in search of worthy rivals, and so far no one has survived. She even built herself a ship in the form of a arena to fight on the spot. But the IOC Jin called her wonderful child. She shone her heart and soul with martial art, extremely talented. C ran out of the corner of her eye, observed chemistry between the singer and the guy, and even envied, but now you need to continue to chat. She said that they should figure out peacefully as the inhabitants of the central plain. But Elena replied that she was talking only through her sword. Therefore, she gathered her power and attacked. The blow was really very powerful, but Ren dodged. Soon the dust dispersed and its outlines appeared in the arena. The girl jumped and shouted that she just wanted to talk. Why did Elena get her weapons out of nowhere and began to attack? The Dream of Bomb noticed that S.E. Ren coped well, although the blow was not carried out in full force. Well, even in this case, it is very difficult to evade the attack of Elena. And you are the flaming devil, say. However, it would be better for her not to dodge. Her subscriber is a crazy scorpion that becomes even more bloodthirsty if it provoke it. As a result, the destruction of the opponent will become so many diseases. Suddenly, some strange hiccups interrupted the battle. These cute sounds were made by Rin, who was gently pounded on the back. He said that such children's pranks should not be scared. Hearing these words, Sleep Bomb was dumbfounded by shock. Judging by the direction, this guy must have stood in the way of Elena's attack. Well, how then he remained unharmed, and even called the attack just a noisy firework? Elena could not leave it just like that. She landed right opposite the guy. He did not even pay attention to her, focusing on Rin. Suddenly, looking into her eyes, the guy called her a child again. Siren shouted to him not to intervene again. But Mok Jin asked what Elena brought here. Grand Rin under his protection, so everything that is connected with her is now being decided through him. The Dream of Bomb, looking at the guy through the scanner, could not recognize him and detect his energy. Is this a nameless creature from the outskirts orders them to leave? It was too brazen for him for Elena. Therefore, she attacked, using almost all of her power. The attack was completely aimed at the guy. Therefore, the rest only observed in fright. The explosion was so strong that it illuminated the entire arena. But the girl's sword stopped right near the hand of the IOC Jin. He stopped the weapon like a toothpick. Elena could not advance further, although the guy simply extended it in his hand. He asked why Elena is here. Really want to fight him? The bomb's dream could not believe it. This guy repelled the blow of the fighting ghost with his palm, having zero internal energy. But the IOC Jin said that it is strange to use the technique of the radiant sword of the Order of the Diansen. This is one. But to use the great divine art of Shaolin Brahma, for the internal energy drive is powerful. Its internal energy drive worked by 90%. Elena's switching skills from 3 cycles to the internal energy of the divine art of the Red Sun. The guy surprised the guy. Cycles are a measure of the designation of internal energy in Senyin. And not only Mok Chin was surprised at Elena's power, but also Som Bomb, because he did not know that she was so strong. Her energy pipeline reached 96%, but the IOC Chin did not even move. He realized that the girl decided to give up the full. At this time, Elena lit up her ring. It was her so-called warning signal. Only she understood that this was a bad sign. She remembered the master who gave her him. He could not stop Elena in her desire to improve. He allowed her any fight but did not allow her death. She was already strong and around the world less than 10 masters of martial art, capable of competing with her. However, even they will not be able to destroy it. But do not forget that the master is her mother, so she left one rule. If the ring gives a signal, then Elena should retreat regardless of circumstances. If you ignore the warning, then it will die anyway. Therefore, you need to gather and run away as quickly as possible. All her children had different fathers, but she gave birth to them. And while her blood flows in Elena, she should be close to everyone. But over time, the mother even forgot the name of her daughter. And this concerned all her children. She called them failed projects. Therefore, she spit on her decree and continued to intensify. Soon it developed up to 120%, overpowering itself. Mok Chin looked at her in surprise, not understanding who was trying to prove what she was trying to prove. But inside, Elena, there was a struggle with her. Sleep Bomb even became worried, looking at his sister. Elena's power reached its limit. It feels like a little more and she will burn. But she coped, and her armor, like a weapon, changed. Mok Jin realized that she was just an unheard-of talent, because she was able to use transcendental awakening with transformation. A lot of time has passed and martial arts have changed, but this is already too much. Elena threw herself on a guy standing in front of her. She used the technique of the chaotic storm of the Ime order. But Mok Jin was too easily evading her attacks, and its strength has already reached 125% when using the technique of piercing sunny spears. Then, it increased to 140% when using the technique of beating a dog bite. But the guy was still easily evading this strange attacks. Then Elena used 170% of her strength and attacked the enemy. And then Mok Jin said that with him, like her, enough. He jumped and attacked Elena in response. There was a very loud explosion in her arena. After him, everything was filled with purple smoke. The guy looked up, trying to see something. Sleep Bomb abstained from comments because of the shock. Captain S.E. Ren and Rin also stared in surprise. Elena changed. She had 6 more hands and she became like a demon. Or an angel. In any case, the sword in each hand looked threatening. The girl was full and again attacked the IOC of Jin. And I have reached 190% already, and it was the limit. A real death machine flew towards the guy. But the guy only asked this child to stop. However, Elena only baked with his calm. Okay. Jin realized that Elena's talent was amazing, but she crossed the line of the permissible. She awakened, showing in her wounds and desires, and the fact that she is absorbed with herself. Her inner demons burst out. Mok Chin waited until she became closer. Then he would be forced to destroy it. Unfortunately, he had no choice because he promised to defend the innocent Grab Rin. Therefore, he simply removed the strength of the Sword of the Heart, directing her to Elena. The last time he ordered her to stop. Well, such a light sparkled that everyone had to cover their eyes. Siren covered them with her hand, trying not to lose sight of the guy. Even Robert, standing outside the window, was scaredly watching it. This time, someone will definitely come to someone. And first of all, to the ship of Elena. He split into several pieces, exploding in the middle of the ships of the Green Forest. It looked like a whole planet exploded. The captain of the ship of the Green Forest looked at it with horror. He was an experienced warrior, but had not yet met such power. Then he heard a cough behind him. It was a dream of bomb, which teleported back to the ship. He looked bad, as there were scratches all over his body. However, he dismissed the captain's help and stood up. Hold the teleport for at least 0.1 seconds. It would be torn to pieces. Glory to heaven, he managed on time. But this explosion was not touched by Rin and Siren, who screamed that the IOC Jin is crazy. Who would have set fire to his ship in the middle of the ocean because of anger? However, the guy replied that restraint in this case is not an option. Then S.E. Ren noticed a red stream on the face of the IOC Gina and asked, worried about whether he was wounded. The guy replied that he was faced with power more powerful than he expected. And then S.E. Ren stared aside where the MOK Chin looked. The body of Elena, which was already without armor, soared in the air. She collapsed due to such energy, and now the girl radiated yellow light. However, MOK Jin said that Elena was still alive. The fact is that someone was protecting her stronger. It was a girl in a cloak like an angel of the guardian. She hugged Elena and stared at the IOC kin and captain. The light appeared from the ship at the top that swept Elena and her savior. Siren realized that this is the heavenly swordsman of the West. She was the mother of the dream of Bomb and Elena. Therefore, she came to save her children. Mok Chin watched this with Elena's weapons in his hands. Mother and daughter disappeared, after which the treatment began. Elena was immersed in a huge flask with water. The heavenly swordsman watched her restoration. There were no emotions on her face, but she was worried. A dream of fights approached her and needed her knee. Ren in fear grabbed a hand by Rin, who also ended up on the ship. Bomb's dream did not think that his mother would come from, but was ready to accept punishment for a lack of devotion. But the swordswoman replied that Sleep Bomb could not intervene, and now it is better for him to behave as if he was not here. Then she turned to the IOC Jin and introduced herself to the heavenly swordsman of the West. Sleep Bomb could not believe that his mother showed respect for this guy. Siren generally heard for the first time and saw her courtesy. But she said that, moving in family affection, she rudely intervened and violated the duel of martial arts. She even offered to cut off her hand, but the guy said not to do this and pointed to Elena. He asked if she was her mother, but then Siren appeared, who said the IOC Jin to speak more respectfully with a woman. However, the guy, like at that moment, the swordsman of the West, did not pay attention to statuses. Moreover, the family had a priority over the duel code, so the IOC Jin said that everything was fine. Siren still asked him to be more polite because he spoke with one of the 5 legendary immortals. She has such a nasty character that she would cut the guy in 2 with only one look. However, now the woman looked quite friendly. So they continued together to calmly fly on the ship. The swordsman said that her daughter's consciousness has not yet been restored, so the exact reason is unknown. It was confirmed that the place through which she went right before was Mount Shasan. This girl was created there. And then the woman asked interestedly whether she could find out if the IOC Chin had something to do with the Order of Heavenly Demons. He replied that he himself did not know, but in the past he had a connection with the Order, but that time has long passed. Time corrodes even the strongest connections, as if they are rusty. Therefore, even those connections that seem more expensive than life are destroyed. Hearing this, the swordswoman realized that the IOC Jin is a very extraordinary personality. Its internal energy and QE perfectly harmonized with martial arts, which was possible only at the time of their origin. But in appearance to the guy about 20, Can it be a rejuvenation? Then the swordswoman wanted to ask the master to ask something, but he himself invited her to fight. Mokchin knew that even though this woman behaves politely, her every word was saturated with the intention to destroy. It is like a sword, sharpened against flint, more and more acute. The guy never refused the battles, but the swordswoman himself is in the know. If they fight, then one of them will die. And the one who survives will be wounded. But the swordswoman arranged these conditions. She released her energy, emitting light which everyone noticed. But then Mokjin asked if they have a reason to fight at all. The swordsman was surprised, and then the guy invited her to fight in the future. If they have a reason, then this will happen. In the meantime, he wants to learn more about this world. The swordsman, struck by his thoughts, reassured her energy. There was nothing more to do here with S.E. Ren. Having gathered, they sat on their ship and hit the road. The swordsmen of the West realized that the request for them was from heavenly demons in order to prevent the leakage of information. Therefore, Bomu's dream was told to destroy them. Everything, it seems, became clear. Except for one thing. That guy perfectly owns the supreme martial art of the Order of Heavenly Demons. But why to destroy it to the same order and entrust it to the Green Forest? But Sleep Bomb replied that recently, there was information that the platoon of the Red Wolves of the Order of Heavenly Demons was destroyed. It was an unknown creature, but perhaps this is due to that guy. But the swordsman told Bomu's dream not to rack his head, because his imagination is still not able to comprehend the situation. You just need to carefully monitor their new acquaintances and report the bottom. Although her son is capable of this? Sleep Bomb replied that the Green Forest proudly bears the title of the best in the subsequent galaxy, and it belongs to the Green Forest, and works for them. A dream at least so wanted to show his mother at least some significance. The swordsman said that she would trust her son, but you need to track them carefully without betraying yourself. She still did not want her child to be crippled. Such care of a strict mother was struck by Bomb's dream, and then she stopped at the door, as if she had forgotten something. She turned and asked what her son is the name there, and while the Bomb's dream was disappointed again, Siran decided to find out something about grabbing Rin. The captain was furious, screamed and asked what she had done that she even attracted a green forest. Also from the 8-foot combat ghost, Elena, and even the heavenly swordsman of the West. She turned the world upside down and did troubles. Grandrin hesitated, apologized, but replied that she did not know. After the end of the tour, she returned home to Shasan, and everything changed there. More precisely, all people were as before, but now they tried to destroy it. Therefore, she ran away and hit the ship of Captain Ren. But S.E. Ren, like Songja, was poorly understood what happened. And while the girl was awkwardly silent, Mokchin eagerly ate sausages. And then Robert interfered, who rose sharply from the table. He was shocked that Crash Rin was from Mount Shasan. He wanted to know what was shaking in his homeland. At this time, the Western swordswoman realized that Elena had returned to normal. The flask broke, and the girl fell out. The swordsman Kim Enha looked at her with a calm look. She told Elena to rise because they would have a serious conversation. Elena looked at her mother with a tired look and obeyed. At this time, the battle that occurred on Elena's ship was studied by the Order of Demons. The strength of the two masters was incomparable, and the commander of the 32nd District did not believe his eyes. Young Rek has never seen such power. Ritek could not understand what this unfamiliar guy is, and then the steps of the swordswoman were heard from behind him. She said it was very impressive. Until now, Ritek has never heard of such a level of ownership of martial art. But he did not understand what it means that the swordsman of the West is familiar. The woman stared at Ritek and understood something. It seems he really knows nothing. Then why did he pursue that guy? So he also attracted the Green Forest. The commander replied that this is the work of their order, and even the Western swordsman cannot be known. This does not concern her in any way. Young Rek turned and stared at the stubborn Enva. Then suddenly a woman took out her weapon. She swung only once and definitely hit. The swordsman made a small cut on the commander's neck. He grabbed his neck and asked if this means that the swordsman declared war on the order. But she asked, is she really afraid of their two wars? The man in response looked at her sternly and said nothing. This woman is obsessed with martial arts so much that she is even ready to destroy her children. She is not one of those who act based on the profit of losses. And she does not wait for answers for a long time, but attacks. But the commander suddenly replied that it was obvious. Even the whole army would not surpass the swordsmen of the West. But Ritek decided to check this, and since she can cope with the army, then let him attack him at first. They say that the Order of Heavenly Demons becomes stronger every day. And the technique of that guy was the technique of Sura's sword, a demonic heart. The heart of the heart, melted with Elena, was the technique of demonic Sura. This is the second skill in the hierarchy of the Order of Heavenly Demons. But Retek did not believe, because this technique was lost thousands of years ago. Legends are only composed of her. And this is not the problem of the swordswoman, that Retek is not aware. She said she knew this for sure, and asked again, "Why are the commander and the Green Forest pursue this guy?" Retek said back again, and then he suddenly said that they were not him. Their goal was a girl from the K-pop of the group, and now she was in the orbital stellar system of Talavetra. Their goal was the planet Slason. They were already close to the homeland of Robert and Ku Rin. Life flowed there. Beautiful cities were built. The guys arrived in the prefecture Prahim. But the most interesting everywhere was absolutely empty. There were not a single living soul in the city. Siren suggested that today everyone has just a day off. But Robert did not think so, since even the doors of stores were open. It seems that all the inhabitants evaporated in an instant. About 10,000 inhabitants lived in this city, but there were no signs of life at all. Robert panicked and invited the captain to go downstairs. Suddenly everyone died? Saran thought that a friend was exaggerating and asked to wait. Robert grabbed the captain by the shoulders and suddenly his eyes grabbed Rin. This was noticed only by nearby IOC Chin. He asked what happened and asked to tell. The girl was silent for a while and then squeezed out the words, "But I did not have time to say anything when Songja discovered signs of life." Judging by the signal, this is in the main headquarters in the pavilion of Jia. Siran remembered that the leader of the Shasan order lives there, but the strangest thing is that only one signal is displayed. Grace Rin only frighteningly lowered her head and hid her eyes behind the cap. But no one paid attention to this, and the ship flew on. They quickly arrived in the Za pavilion. At first glance, it was empty there. But suddenly S.E. Ren noticed something curious. It was Robert in some kind of combat suit. He was aggressively tuned to those who encroached on his native Zemliatsu. But the captain said that it was strange that this costume is still suitable. But Robert replied that he who served in a special forces is always a special forces, and he polished this suit every day. But then there was a signal about Songja. There is 100 nearby. But this could not be a signal from a person, so they should be careful. Then the captain decided to first launch a reconnaissance drone. But as soon as Robert realized that there may not be a person, he rushed forward, threatening to destroy it. It was strange for S.E. Ren that her friend would be so fussing only because they were in his homeland. The guys had no choice but to follow these special forces. Suddenly, a strange light appeared ahead. C ran with an interest and cautiously began to peer into him. And suddenly, everything around was blazing with fire, filling the entire passage. The building, as if someone had set fire to from all sides. The explosion was powerful and spread to a large radius, but he did not harm the guys. Grand Rin looked at him as if she had already seen it. But when the smoke scattered, she found that she was facing face with S.E. Ren. It turned out that the frightened girls in their arms was held by the IOC Jin. He saved them, grabbing in his arms, as if he had got two beauties. Frightened C, Ren asked what it was, but no one knew the answer to this, and suddenly they heard a rustle. It was Robert, who, surprisingly, remained alive. But he did not move, and S.E. Ren came closer to him. The captain asked Songja, "Is Robert still alive?" She replied that he was, fortunately, his suit coped with the task. And the fact that he is silent, most likely, a consequence of the loss of consciousness from fear. Siren laughed nervously next to Robert's frozen costume. Only the IOC Jin said nothing yet. He stared at a strange purple flower that fell from above. He glowed with a bright purple light, like a comet in the sky. It was like flying sakura, but when he landed on the guy's head, he scattered into fragments. Soon, hundreds of such flowers appeared around him. They accumulated in one place and as if materialized something. He was a man sitting on a throne in the hall. Mok Chin, seeing him, did not express a single emotion. Saran realized that this was the source of the signal. Songja confirmed this and said, "It said that this was the leader of Shasan, Yunchok-san, the lord of the sword of the blossomed flower." Siren could not believe that she was such a strong master. Its plum flowers opened from the heat. This means that it has reached perfection in the technique of the heart of the heavenly aroma of plum flowers. Siren asked why then they burn with purple. JJ replied that this means that this technique was mixed with the divine art of purple fog. And suddenly there was a quiet voice of Dick Rin, who called this man a dad. and her sadness and fright were understandable, since there was clearly something wrong with the Choksan. The leader of Shasan seemed to be bewitched. Si-Ren looked at the IOC Jina and asked what was happening. He replied that the technique of plum flowers embodies extreme yang, while the divine art of purple fog embodies extreme yin. It is almost impossible to mix them, and when the desire of the masters exceed their limit, the demon takes on the roots in their hearts. Since then, the master is no longer a man, so now the IOC Chin wanted to fight with him. He told the team to leave, as he could not guarantee their safety. But Crash Rin, the daughter of the leader, rushed to her father. Si-Ren did not have time to stop her, because she rushed to the monster. The captain rushed after her, shout that it is dangerous. But Mok Jin, that is already too late. The girl ran too close to her father. Even Songja tightened greatly when she saw it. Her devices showed that it was insanely dangerous. But Kleena Rin already held out her hands to her dad. On the screen, Songja appeared a timer at 17 o'clock, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. At the same time, he already hugged the Shana with all his might. Everyone else watched this from afar. But suddenly the purple light scattered, turning into bright yellow. It seems that the arms of the daughter helped to recover the sanctuary. He got up and hugged her tightly in response. Si-Ren no longer understood what was happening. Everything normalized and returned to its place. The girl was sure that everything would be as before, but the devices showed differently. Timer Songja already showed 18 hours 3 seconds. Suddenly people began to go out into the street. Everything was as if nothing had happened. The city came to life again and played with bright colors. People were absolutely calm and funny. And although they disappeared before, they returned in an instant. And all this thanks to grabbing Rin? Was she really able to remove the spell from her father? Thus, a veil was removed from the whole city. The team decided to go there and have a bite. Si-Ren did not understand why the bioscanner did not show them life. Songja replied that she checked everything and was normal. Now she doubled and everything is exactly in order. But something is wrong. The internal energy of all these people at zero. Moreover, this concerned both children and adults. The wake-up, Robert asked if this has a meaning, because they all look normal. They thought that everyone was killed, but this is not so such an outcome is better. Then he raised his hand and called the waiter to order a hotchik. Si-Ren was glad that the fussy friend was behaving normally again and saw the waiter. The young girl came up and Robert ordered a double portion of noodles and a large portion of pork. He wanted to order something else, but suddenly the waitress just passed by. It was so strange, as if the girl did not even notice them. Robert was indignant and thought that she was just a lot to earn, so she did not hear. Well, she returned and raised her hand to Robert again to call her. But the waitress once again passed by. And only at that moment to Robert what came. Songja said that the point is not that they are not heard. They are not even seen. Not a single visitor once looked at them, although they were right in front of them. The team for them is part of the background, and no one notices their presence. Si-Ren did not really want to intervene in it since she had a bad foreboding. But it seemed that they had no choice, so they decided to return to the palace. There, Choksan rested and poured himself tea. He continued to drink tea, although the guests stood next to him. Grand Rin said that this was not like a father, because he was always polite. She tried to call Dad but realized that he did not see them with the IOC Jin. This man was still so since the return of Kleena Rin from the tour. But the most strange thing is that he does all his affairs and work as usual. He drinks tea, cares for the garden, goes to work, and all this, as on a schedule. Mok Chin decided to approach and try to attract attention, but it was useless. The guy had already taken a mug from the Shana, but Rin warned that it was worth it to be more careful. If you interrupt its routine actions, it will be bad. She shouted to the guy to leave soon when a sword was already hanging over him. In the last second, he was able to evade the blow of the leader of Shasan. Still, the IOC Jin realized that you should not interfere with the rituals of this clockwork doll. But Johnson was not going to advance and attacked again. But the guy was too easily evading his blows. The master was strong, but the IOC Chin seemed faster than him. His dodging from the blows was at the level of God. And then Choksan decided to use his strength and directed energy to the guy. But it seemed enough for him, and he directed his strength in response. The opponent's hands touched his hands. A powerful power oozed from them, as if two titans came together. Grand Rin screamed and begged the guy to stop. He continued that, and there was a lot of dust and smoke around. Equally, from all this, the silhouette of the Shana appeared. The guy realized that he again called the extreme yin and yang at the same time. Then Grand Rin cried out that his father just needs to return his cup, otherwise he would brood her more. Mok Chin replied that when the masters exceed the highest level of the limit, the human body no longer withstands. First, they succumb to the inner demon, and then their bodies burst like a balloon and fly into pieces. So demons are freed from the body and go out. And it is clear that for this it is necessary to achieve an impossible area. But for now, Shasan was a man. But these flowers looked strange. It was interesting that it was behind the impulse of the sand. But he directed a huge flower with destructive energy to the guy. Grandrin shouted to him rather to return the cup to his father. At the last moment, the Mok Chin managed to do this. He waved this cup and threw it right into the master. She flew at high speed. A huge energy flower rang towards her. It seems that he was going to absorb a cup. Well, the cup flew through the plum flower. Moreover, after that the flower disappeared. He seemed to dissolve in the air, and even Rin did not even see this. At some point, Shasan caught his cup. His energy inside gradually began to fade. However, he still looked dangerous, and so he just put the cup back on the table. After that, as if nothing had happened, he continued to drink tea. Mok Chin relaxed with little contempt, and Rin, with relief, looked at the situation. It was already dark on the street for a long time, and the guys went to the balcony. Grand Rin said that 15 days ago she returned home after the tour. But everything has changed too much. This was noticed by the rest of the team while in the city. All people were like clockwork dolls. They did the same at the same time. And if you distract them, then the house began. And now Robert decided to get to the bottom of one of the inhabitants. He stopped the guy unknown to him and asked why he was doing this. He, like a zombie, paid attention to Robert. The stranger simply continued to speak on the phone and go forward. This ignoring is already tired of Robert. He remained in shock to stand in the same place. He watched a guy who suddenly evaporated in the air. It seems that he disappeared like NPS, and then again appeared in front of Robert in the same pose. He stared in surprise at the stranger. Then he looked at Song Ja and asked, was he really teleporting? But the girl did not know the answer to this question. Siran realized that even if she did not know, no one knew. But Song Ja added that if you look at the shape of a particle, then yes, this is a teleportation. But it occurs on a too large scale. And suddenly all the people around disappeared again. Where they disappeared, it was not clear. The city was empty again. Song Ja stated that all traces of life disappeared on the whole planet. Siren simply could not believe it. It is very strange. But this was explained by the IOC Gina Dick Rin. After all people disappeared, something strange appeared. Robert, S.E. Ren, and Song Jang now watched it with his own eyes. In the distant cities in the fog, they noticed a crowd. But it was definitely not people. They were more like some robots and were very scared. Moreover, each of them was armed. They surrounded the team members from all sides and filled the streets of the city. However, it was not even clear whether they were dangerous. But S.E. Ran realized that it was definitely abnormal. She recognized these creatures. These are android. But just so they never appear. Songja said that these are not androids, construction droids. This model was created for labor and development of the planet. Since this is an early model, it is equipped with artificial intelligence of low power. Robert has already relaxed because this is a robot and builders. And S.E. Ren added that, according to the law, droids cannot touch people. Moreover, they have poor cognitive abilities. But Robert was embarrassed that all of them had spears, so S.E. Ren decided to prove on her example. She was sure that the robot is safe, but then one of them attacked her. Fortunately, the girl was able to reflect his blow, but he turned out to be strong enough, so she flew away. She did not understand why the droids attacked her. Well, what was her surprise when not only one, but all the others rushed to the attack? There were hundreds or even thousands of them, and all of them attacked their three. This could not but transfer a lot of noise and explosions. Fortunately, this attracted the attention of Rin, standing on the balcony. She immediately realized who it was. In the form of droids appeared when everyone disappeared. And now, the guys had to run away from them and fight off. These droids are programmed to destroy all living things. They overtook living objects absolutely everywhere. Grand Rin, when she returned after the performance, they also attacked her. If her father was not next to her, she would not have survived. But now he is not his own. Does the same thing as under hypnosis and disappears. Oddly enough, all the way to the place where her father was, disappeared. Johnson always returned to his throne. He sat on him, activate his strength. There was not a single person around, since only a leader remained of the living. However, he has long lost his appearance. And suddenly Mok Jin, standing in front of a Bangsan, said Cleanerin to hold on. At first, I did not understand what the guy means. He explained that Shasan puts physical strength and mental in this. Mok Jin was even ready to help him because he has something to lose. And this is his precious daughter, which he protects even when in this state. Oddly enough, it is really impressive. Then the guy said not to worry about him and added that Rin Crash would go with him. A person is capable of a lot, and the IOC Chin wanted to see what is upstairs. At this time, the guys from the team still ran away from the drones. They made their way into the castle, but the drones even surrounded them there. Ren still could not believe in the anger of these robots. How can droids created to protect mankind attack them? Even Songjia said it was impossible. Artificial intelligence does not allow robots to violate the third law. They cannot even think about attacking a person. But Robert shouted almost in hysteria how these robots broke, or are they not like people? Maybe these are still military androids, not robots. Well, a new crowd of robots came and there was no time to think. Siren said Songjia hide behind her, and he prepared for the attack. Robots, as if on command, flew into Ren. But suddenly some power threw them aside. A loud explosion rang out in front of the girls. They did not understand what happened, because who could help them? And suddenly behind them, they did not see Robert in their famous battle costume of special forces. He claimed that these were not droids, but steel soldiers. And now, Robert was no longer afraid of these cars, but the guys did not even assume that they were following them. Robert Carroll, the former first sergeant of a special tactical unit, was not difficult to recognize. Like Dan Ren, who was immediately recognized with her intellectual android Songjia. Robert was an eminent warrior in the battle group of the Northern Galaxy. Rakshalans are a group of hunters who mainly work on the outskirts of galaxies. They are not a threat, they can be erased in 10 seconds. But the man who followed them was very interested in this. He was especially interested in Robert, because he was from the unit of a special group. It turned out that Count Rachel watched the guys. There were many androids around him, who were ready to attack at any time. But the Count was in no hurry, so there was time to help friends to the IOC. He came to the battlefield and saw a bunch of broken pieces of iron. He realized that it seems that the battle has already ended. All this was thanks to Robert, who scattered the robots to fluff. Well, suddenly he told everyone to prepare, as he was waiting for this day. But suddenly the iron hand of his costume fell. Robert was indignant because he lubricated the suit every day, so that they do everything if he listened to someone and sold his equipment. He was forced to sell all this, and if he could not stand this pressure and threw everything away, Songjia said that he couldn't throw it away, but to leave the suit was a good idea. Otherwise, they would have died. But the MOK Jin raised his hand, broke in the new robot, and asked, "Is it really armor? Because it looks like a piece of metal." Siren replied that this was not an armor, but a droid, just a robot. But the MOK Jin first heard this word. Siren decided not to explain such a difficult topic and asked to summarize everything Songjia. She explained that these are cars that can think like people. The guy realized that the world has changed a lot. But how can a piece of iron imitate a person? And suddenly, he noticed something strange when he looked at Songjia. She took off her head and said something like that. Mok Chin was so scared that he grabbed and shouted. Ren was surprised that the guy still does not know about the nature of Slesia. But they had no time for this explanation. Suddenly, the eye of the broken robot caught fire. And while the IOC Jin was scared of the android head removed, the broken robot watched him. This person was not registered in the database. Also, it is not even equipped with an internal drive, which is quite natural. But Count Rucher said that they had nothing to worry about. Lonely so far, this is his problem. An elite soldier of a special tactical unit of a combat group. Moreover, this is the highest level, and Robert caused the Count the most suspicion. He was definitely not just here, so the Count decided to find out all the details. Therefore, he, after a certain watch, was already waiting for guests. The ship arrived in 32 dioceses of the Heavenly Demonic Church. There is already Count Risher and his assistant bowed when the hatch opened. Apparently, a very important person came to them. All this happened at the headquarters of the Central Association to Prevent Natural Disasters. Also, this guest was responsible for the safety of the church. Reacher respectfully said that the emerging master had a difficult day. And then, the guest yawned and confirmed that the flight was not easy. Oddly enough, this respected person looked like a child. Small, bald, and sleepy. However, he was the secretary of the first-class Cho Tain. He was led to a wounded fighter from the army of a demonic order who fought with the IOC Xin. It was necessary to explore a strange wound in a man on his head, the secretary thought, looking at the mark of his hands on the bald head of the warrior. To see him, those Inu had to climb into a chair. He touched the print and asked if it hurt. He replied that the pain was already subsided a little, but there is still a burning sensation in his head. The secretary was surprised that instead of pain, the warrior feels the heat. The same bowed his head and replied that it was. And suddenly, his head pierced a sharp pain. The little hand of those in all strength slammed the printing. The man screamed loudly from surprise and pain. Now there were 2 prints on his head, large and small. After that, the secretary raised his smoking hand. And then I thought about something for a long time. Reacher saw that the first scar is swollen and the second was too dumb. He suggested that they used a different type of martial art, but he replied that he was the same. It was a scar 9 hands made by the same technique. This is the martial art of the lowest level in their school, which is taught all students. Soon, the secretary went to another room, and the assistant Reacher followed him. Rooker himself said that he had learned this art at the age of 7. But Scar's 9 hands are very different from them. The secretary to whom the table was covered replied that the basis of this technique is cold, because with warmth, everything is felt differently. They say that the guy reached a level where he completely eliminated the cold, which is the basis for 9 hands yin, and only the heat of the blow remained. The main thing is not to harm the enemy, and that guy hit Sanjeon Muak. Reacher could not believe that this is possible because changing the basics of non-being was no different from creating fire from ice. Those in replied that, theoretically, this is possible, but only in theory. But at first he just wanted to eat a Kanjinman. Reacher did not share the calmness of the secretary, but could not contradict. And while the secretary had lunch, the members of the SE Ren team did the same. Robert told the captain about military soldiers. She ate a sausage and listened to that Robert, being in the service, heard about the secretly developed military androids. Siren said that this simply could not be, because their intellect is based on the laws of robots. Robert replied that in order to avoid this problem, the intellectual system is replaced by the human brain. You can kill a person not by autonomous will, but by a remote signal through the human brain. And while Robert explained the project of Steel Soldiers, Emok Jin could not come off Songja. He felt her face and could not believe that she was not a man. She said that she could unscrew his head again, and the guy recoiled. He was surprised at this strange world again and again, but now he decided to eat. But suddenly he found that there were no more sausages. After all, Robert and the captain ate everything. But sausages were little interested in S.E. Ren. She thought about droids with the human mind. If this is true, then who could come up with and create this? Then she saw that the IOC Chin was staring at her and asked what happened. And then she stared at the empty tray and understood. However, she did not make excuses for food and stood up abruptly, saying that it was time to return. She needs to find out what kind of nonsense is happening on that planet. But the Emok Jin did not calm down. How, after the rights and ruled Kanho, who collapsed to the ground, you can steal food? But the girl did not pay attention and only rushed her wards. Robert, seeing the energy accumulating around the IOC, also stood up sharply. Even Songja decided to leave the room as soon as possible. So the guy was left completely alone to cool. He looked at an empty tray and stood up a rumbling stomach. Only crumbs remained there. Mok Chin decided to pick them up. Then he put in his mouth and licked his finger. He obviously did not eat this, but the matter did not go away. Having landed back, the team began to explore the fallen droids. It was necessary to clearly understand whose leadership they acted. After the battle, the whole city was in the details of these robots. Robert noticed that the assembly has very poor quality, like an alloy. Songcha suggested that it was an experimental example, not a finished product. She analyzed parts of robots using a scanner in the eye, and suddenly she noticed something curious. Siren asked what was the system of these droids. The girl only replied that she was very simple. It is equipped with a chip close to the type of primitive intellectual scheme. The implementation of only very simple entered commands without independent will. It is even ashamed to call artificial intelligence. Then the captain asked what with remote control. The assistant replied that everyone had it. The total number of attackers of droids was 9817 pieces. If all androids were steel soldiers, then the matter would be worse. She still did not know who was behind all this. All this time they were observed from afar. The creator of these robots was clearly interested in these guys. They did not know that this was at least 9817, and a person became part of the biological chain of these machines. A real person was attached to each robot. This amount was very surprised by the captain. Songja was confident in her calculations and that people were injured. Only one person from this city lacked. The leader of Shasan is Choksan, who was also under control. His daughter, who, so far, was next to him. It is funny that they did not even suspect that their new friend became a problem. The secretary of those Inia, having finished his lunch, said that the order on immobilization and blockade was published in all 32 suburbs. No one can be allowed or moved, and also all staff must be returned back. Then the count asked why this was needed. The secretary replied that now difficult times and 2,000 years, the world has long stained the status of a Miramal alliance. During this time, there was an incident, the background of which is unknown, and a person whose past is unknown. Does the count know what happens when a tiger ruling the mountain loses his teeth? He replied that the wolves were beginning to rule the mountain. But those in said that this is a mistake. The wolves are trying to turn into a tiger. Tigers are the cause of the formation of wolves. Tigers disappear, and if you look at it from the point of view of those who lived with tigers, the wolves suddenly begin to seem calm. They are weaker than tigers, and in this case the first goal is the strongest wolf. Due to the habit of keeping tigers under control, the remaining wolves to unite and try to kill the strongest wolf. In Murim, about the same thing now, so you need to be extremely careful. Reacher suggested that it is not known, using their martial arts, are also related to this. The secretary replied that ignorance is the biggest problem. On the way here, he received a confidential message. This one, unknown to the volcano. Rasher was surprised. Is the volcano not the main element of that incident? Those in replied that this is a powder barrel which could explode at any time and the sparks are already flying. Then he went into his ship and the hatch closed behind him. He advised rest as if you died and went back. Count Reacher looked after the retreating cosmic crew. He thought that this person did not know the backstage events and the past. Soon the morning in Shasan came, where the SE Ren team was. The captain visited Nari Ren and asked, "Did people appear again besides her father at night here?" She replied that it was, only her father is always here. At least it looks like this. But everyone perfectly understood that this was no longer her father. It seems that he was constantly revived in his plum colors. Siren asked Songja, how much is left before sunset? She replied that here day and night are replaced every 6 hours. So now they will change. The captain at first did not understand what her assistant was talking about. And then she saw how Rin hugged her father with tenderness. She knew that dad wishes everything unconsciously and strokes on the head, enjoys tea, examines the building, reads a book. He did this on her birthday a year ago before her departure on the tour, and for some reason he now repeats it every day. And other people are the same. Each perform the same routine. Robert's voice was heard from the headphone of SE Ran. He said that there is still no one in the city. Then the captain asked why everyone is late today. Songja replied that she was feeling something strange, but all of it seemed very blurry. The captain was surprised why her assistant was blurring, and suddenly she herself noticed how she began to dissolve in space. Songcha noticed something strange about life indicators. They disappeared along with SE Ren, who soon disappeared. In the room remained Songja and Crash Rin with his father in an embrace. At this time, a pirate ship soared in space. Songbomb ruled them, and then someone came to him with the news. The assistant said that recently, a teleportation was discovered in the center of the volcanic planet. As a result of the identification of the mobile body, it was identified as the flaming demon of SE Ren. Sleep Bomb was surprised to hear this name, especially on the second satellite of the volcanic planet of Kent. And they were just approaching him. The surface of the planet was completely covered with craters, and in the water of them there was a strange cough. It was SE Ren, who was scared, as she did not see her body. She did not understand why her body disappeared. She seemed to be a ghost after death or spirit. She tried to get out of the crater because she still had so much, but suddenly she noticed that she was in the dark, but at the same time feels hard underfoot. She began to look around and suddenly noticed some living. In front of her was a man behind whom there were robots. He looked calm and for some reason very dangerous. But the girl was not shy, but rather interested. She looked at the strange, skewed face of a man in a mask. But so far I have not ventured to ask anything. I learned a dream about this teleportation and it was strange. The driving entity did not receive permission to teleport. If so, then this is prohibited by space. It could be a teleportation in one direction. The problem is serious, so the assistant invited the owner to inform the authorities about this. Then the dream of Bomb asked if there is someone higher for him than him. The assistant hesitated and looked at his master. And then she began to make excuses, saying that only a dream can command them. Therefore, the man ordered him to simply observe. If creatures from this satellite really use prohibited technologies, then here external forces are precisely involved here. Therefore, it is better not to interfere, but carefully observe. After all, what they know about the existence of this place is already good. Soon the assistant left, and Sleep Bomb continued to look at the satellite. One more news came to the swordswoman of the Wild West, surprised because of her. This is what her daughter Elena told her. She said that Abby met on a volcano. Obviously, he said that he was her father. She became infected with him, but obviously lost. Hearing this, the pupils of the swordsman were widened. This Abby broke not only her daughter, but the one whom she called her father. But the fact that he is now in the volcano will not remain just like that. And now the narrative goes to the angry Robert. Upon learning of the loss of the captain, he said evil that he needs to save her. How some fool dared to kidnap their leader? Robert was so outraged that the IOC Chin did not even fully understood all his words. And then Songjia intervened and said that it was better not to translate this. Then Clin Rin said that the place where Se Ren was kidnapped is most likely associated with the case of the star. Other people also disappeared, and of course there is no confirmation. But Songjia suddenly found him saying that it is like in case of a volcanic planet. Forced teleportation. It is highly likely that this is prohibited. Then Robert was even more worried. He grabbed the IOC Jin so that he also inadvertently disappeared. The guy, suffocating, asked why Robert is like that, and Songjia replied that he had returned from the PTSR army. When he is worried, it is difficult for him to control anger. But the guy's harmless eyes asked him to let him go. Songjia said it was useless, and you need to wait for Robert to calm down. However, Mokjin was not going to wait again, asked to let him go. His tone was so hard that Robert did this and apologized. Songjia was surprised that the guy managed to bring Robert to himself. She said if the captain was unilaterally teleported, then it would be difficult to get her. With current technologies, it is difficult to quickly overcome long distances. Therefore, it is difficult to imagine the movement to other planets, especially to volcanic. Most likely, she is on the second companion. There is no life on the planet except for one person, but they excluded it. Then two satellites remain, Comte and Kikaris. Biological processes pass there, but these two satellites are so close to each other that it is impossible to clearly determine. Then the Emok Jin did not doomedly asked what to do. Songjia thought and remembered that on a golden companion you could not use my feet. But in front of them is a yellow planet, so they fly to Kikaris. Unfortunately, it was wrong. Siren was almost nearby, on the second satellite of the volcanic planet, and this strange man was still looking at her. Then she asked who he was, and he scanned her all this time. The robot said that the girl has an external disk, with a capacity of 1.4 gigabytes. Inside the case, a dense inner disk is installed in excess, with a capacity of 3.3 gigabytes. The only weapon is the sword fixed on the belt. The man was surprised at the inner disks with such a capacity. He had long hidden hunting things. But the girl once again asked who he was. But I already thought that this man is deaf. But now the problem has appeared. A large ray lit up a small green sprout. In front of him was a man who was not yet known. But he was the master of the secretary, who came with a report. He bowed and said that the problem had appeared. The owner knew that this happened in the volcano, and already sent his people. He advised the secretary not to rush and wait until all the buds bloom. It is necessary to continue to find out who is behind this, and so they will be able to quickly defeat him. The secretary was brought up in curiosity, but it seemed to the owner that he had become less. However, those in INU preferred not to answer this. Then the owner asked if he still has any problem. He replied that during the investigation of the incident, a stranger appeared. He used martial arts, but the energy began to be released in the reverse order. Their school also thinks that he knows the method of magic sword. Moreover, he knows the state of polarity. And the problem is that this is not their student. Hearing this, the owner categorically said to destroy the enemy. Rostachka, on which the light shone, immediately wilted. The old man seemed to go crazy and boiled. I cited that this fool urgently needs to be destroyed. The secretary did not understand why the owner reacts like that. Of course, he was a danger, but it was still too much. However, he is not the one who will dispute the decisions of his master. He sat on his ship and began to meditate right in space. And now back to Se Ren, who was in the den of a robot man. But he did not answer her questions and ordered the robot to check her. He once again scanned everything. And then in an instant he was right behind the girl. He sharply swung at her, but she managed to turn. Then I used my energy to attack, but the robot was much stronger and faster than it. At some point he grabbed her head. Siren did not know what she was fighting, but it was very fast. The man's man told her to accept his fate, because resistance is useless. Suddenly, I decided to ask a few questions, and if she answers correctly, he will give her a painless life. But the girl did not even want to listen to him, continuing to resist. This person certainly did not expect such a reaction. Suddenly, the girl took out her weapon. She began to swing them, defending herself. She created a huge whirlwind that could cut the robot. But he was even faster and reached S.E. Ren. He put his iron hand to her, but she dodged. This confrontation lasted a long time. The man replied that it was useless because robots had data about all the martial arts of the world. It is simply impossible to even hurt it elementary, and S.E. Ren has already begun to understand this perfectly. He read all her movements, but she continued, and once again missed. Suddenly, the robot lifted her into the air, and then with all his strength he threw back to the side. The girl fell to the floor and slipped, and then the robot again became in the combat rack. But S.E. Ren still did not give up and rose to her feet. She took her sword and waved it. The masked man watched this battle with interest. The robot also continued to look at the girl. She was in full readiness to defend herself. She was scared and she was tired but did not want to stay. Is everything against him is really useless? Suddenly, the robot in an instant was again behind her, and then he held out his hands to her neck. But the girl jumped, not giving up so simple. She spun in the air, flying through the robot. Once above, she decided to attack. The robot stared at her and jumped up. Then, the captain used the equipment. She launched her sword right in the robot flying on her. He almost approached his flashing face, but he was too weak to cut steel. Therefore, the robot simply threw the sword aside. And then with his hand he almost reached the girl. But suddenly something intercepted his hand. The movements of the robot were constrained. Suran's sword seemed to turn into a spiral enveloping his hand. Therefore, with one hand the robots could not move. So he is the isomer? He extended his hand to his chest. S.E. Ren. And suddenly the sword again became solid. He stretched up and pierced the steel head of the robot. Thus, a light on the sensor went out. Robot and S.E. Ren seemed to hang in the air. The robot was destroyed, and the man in a mask already crushed his cup or then surprise. Did this girl use the rain dragon? A 4,000th brigade. The affected robot fell to the ground. Following him landed S.E. Ren. She grabbed the wounded stomach and looked at the man in a mask. And now he was asking her a question. Who is she? But S.E. Ren did not answer, realizing that she had a problem. The man said that he had collected this brigade for 10 years, and now it is destroyed. What kind of martial art did this girl use? It was very strange, and this is the sentence. Suddenly, she used an integrated operating system of air quality. The man realized that this is a secret technique that is taught only in German. But the girl did not want to listen to him, and turning it on, soared into the air. The man looked after her and said that she had captured the whole sky. Like a comet, S.E. Ren flew up. It was like a huge firework. A man has not seen such a sight in his whole life. It was very beautiful and very dangerous, but he knew that soon she would fall and would be in his power. The light poured from all the cracks in his lair, but he did not catch up with her. And now the action was transferred to the next ship. It was again Elena, who told her mother about meeting her father. Obviously, she came to the volcano for a reason. She lost consciousness for a moment, and when she woke up, she was next to him. He was the same man in the mask that created robots. Elena stood opposite her father, looking into the eyes. Presenting this picture, the swordsman of the West was horrified. She thought that it was because of this that one-sided teleportation was used. The man in the mask was not surprised at the arrival of his daughter, because she is here because he would fulfill her desire. Hearing this, Elena was very surprised. The man said that she wants to become stronger and see the whole world. He has ears everywhere, even the ship is turned into a combat arena. The closer they come, the further the road becomes. Does Elena not cry every day from despair? He called Elena here to give her the power to look at everyone high. She realized that her father knew a lot about her, and it angered her. Then he got up and said that she would understand everything. Faced with this, after which their battle began. But no matter what she did, everything was useless. It seemed that he had unlimited forces. He made himself a robot and the same show of S.E. Ren. Now it was practically not a person. He did not even spare his own daughter. But he promised her, like Se Ren later, to make her as strong. She is his daughter, so she will become like that. And he asked to answer one question. It was then that he would make her stronger, and all this in exchange for a concussion. The swordsman listening to this was silent in surprise. And then she stared at her daughter, who sparkled. She said that she was given new power, and now she is also a steel soldier. At this time, Songjia and the team were looking for S.E. Ren. Robert was still in a panic and was constantly in a hurry. And suddenly Song Ja noticed some strange object. A moving point was displayed on the radar. At that very moment, the ship was directed in this direction. So they flew to a small round ship. He was tiny enough for great danger. Robert got angry when he saw the ship and ordered Song Ja to remove him. But she suddenly replied that she could not do this. He looks small, but this is a destroyer of the Voyager class, but it is not clear whose he is. And suddenly Song Ja was surprised, realizing that he belongs to the Church of the Heavenly Demon. Robert even calmed down from such information. So on their ship appeared the secretary of those in. He went into the room and stood right opposite the IOC Jin. The guy was sitting and sadly eating the last sausage. Those I immediately realized that the one was talking about. And that Robert turned to the secretary and asked what he forgot here. He replied that he was a senior official of the headquarters to prevent natural disasters to ensure the safety of the church. And then he sat opposite the guy and wished him a pleasant appetite. Robert was surprised. How can this child be a senior official? But he replied that he came to ask something. However, Mok Jin did not even break away from his food and told the secretary to leave. He replied that Rochelle Ackmond, the same man in a mask, was the instigator of the incident. He was a high-class scientist and was responsible for the development of military weapons of military industry in people. It was he who developed steel soldiers, but his methods were inhuman, so he was kicked out. And now he is hiding and conducting experiments of a larger scale. But the guy replied that he had not been kicked out, and he received support, but secretly. Those in replied that they think that he was covered with military leaders of the human government. Then Mok Jin suddenly broke away from food and asked for water. The secretary was surprised that such information did not cause any reaction. Who is this strange guy? And then Robert intervened, deciding to clarify about the military leaders. Is this the human government does it all? The secretary replied that private traders could not cope with this, so they better leave. But Robert could not leave his captain. The secretary replied that there is nothing to be done here, you can only pray. But Robert exclaimed and said that this is nonsense, and they will still go to look for the captain. Then the MOK Chin said that they are not going to stop them. On the contrary, they pushing them to take a step forward. This is valuable information, but why did they tell it to them? Most likely, they will use them as tools and dump all responsibility. Such as a secretary will not do anything with their own hands. Then those in decided to ask who this stranger is. The guy looked at him and asked in response, "Did he want to know this?" In response, the secretary only said nothing. Then the guy got up and said that he did not need to know this, because they will have nothing to do. Those then exclaimed, "Is it really indifferent to the church?" Mok Chin turned around and replied that they did not give a damn. Then the secretary believed and repeated again. The team itself said that it was not related to the church. Therefore, all further actions would not relate to school, but the guy was still in wave and left. The secretary had no choice but to leave the ship. Mok Jin watched after the retreating space apparatus. He thought that it was good that there were still talented people in the church. But this secretary is clearly not yet ripe. Then Robert burst and told us to set off. But Song Ja interrupted him and said that the coordinates had changed. Now they need to fly not in Kikarus but in Kent, those only as if he were waiting. So soon they ended up on the second companion in the volcanic planet of Kent. The captain was there, inside the big crater. She was unconscious when she was dragged on the ground. It was Rochelle Ackmond, who just did not let the girl go. He dragged her into his new laboratory. In front of him was a table for experiments. It was to him that he dragged Seiren, and suddenly she woke up and asked what he was going to do. Rochelle was surprised that she woke up so quickly. He called her an aristocrat, Madame 4000. The girl asked where she was and what are they going to do with her. Rochelle told her not to worry because he just wants to save her from pain. He will make her forget absolutely everything. Only obedience will give her a simple and comfortable life. He put on the girl a bracelet that blocked her movements. It was useless to move because he paralyzed her nervous system. Now her body will not obey her. From now on, she will only be an obedient dog. Siran tried to move everything, but the man repeated that it was useless. But what was his surprise when he saw a girl in front of him? She stood and looked at him. Siren told him not to dream because he can destroy 4000 but not dominate him. Then the girl, making the last efforts, touched the costume of Ritual. He did not immediately realize that she had released poison into him. Siren explained that this is the poison of hemispherical blood, the gift of her family. It can be used when a person is at death. She was now in this position, and the girl did it, sticking her hand into iron inserts. Rochelle tried to resist, but now S.E. Ren replied that it was useless. This is from her birth, and I am so inhabited by even melting iron. Now, if they leave this world, they will do it together. And then something flashed past them very quickly. It was a robot that interrupted the access of the poison by the girl's hands. He literally destroyed it, sharing it in half. The exhausted SE Ren looked down. There was red liquid from her hand everywhere. And at that moment, the alarm suddenly worked. Rachel Ackman was surprised and put on monitors. Someone crossed the border, and now the offender was discovered. Mok Chin and Robert were already heading to the lair of a crazy professor. And suddenly it was towards the crater that the fountain of red strange points flew out of the crater. If you look closely, you can see that these were the very battle droids. Robert said to leave them to him, ordering the guy to go in search of the captain. But the Mok Chin himself unexpectedly broke off. He developed a huge speed and rushed up. Robert was surprised at such a quick speed reaction. He was faster than robots, or flew right into the crater. Somehow, he was able to penetrate inside through a whole crowd of droids. And then a huge explosion came from the crater. Robert did not have time to blink as everything around exploded. A huge shockwave began to destroy robots. They fled to Robert, and he decided to first figure out what it was. Many of them survived and rushed to the attack. But the soldier was not a mistake and began to attack in response, although he did not understand who he was fighting. Rochelle, with a hole in his iron chest, watched this. He was really impressed by the power of Robert's costume. He thought that there were relics, shooting and robots. Then, when many got close, Robert decided to use a photon gun. After it, a rocket of a volley of type auto laser. And this, of course, worked, as there was an explosion. Robert jumped and attacked again and again. Suddenly, he jumped high and used the anti-gravity missile. This technique was created exclusively for special forces. Rochelle's robot explained to him, as well as the fact that these techniques are already outdated and removed from weapons. Then Rochelle realized that Robert was retired and stopped worrying. He ordered a robot to erase him with everyone, and suddenly the walls of the laboratory staggered sharply. Rochelle turned and unemotional to find out what was the matter. Then his robot reported that the attacker entered the 8th zone. Then, immediately through the 8th zone, he went to the 7th. And this already forced Rachel to be seriously worried. How could some stranger pass his zones so quickly? He changed them, one after another, and suddenly even his robots ceased to understand where he was. Rachel has never been to this in practice. His robot was in search of the location of the attacker. But before he had time to answer, when he exploded, the strongest robot scattered into pieces. Rochelle, scared to peer into the haze of dust. One of the people who were in the water and capsules began to move. The tubes began to break away and the man began to release. And suddenly the whole system flew. All energy and nutrient tubes were disabled. Rochelle, in a panic, looked at his destroyed creations, and so he saw in the distance the silhouette of a stranger. Near a huge hole in the wall stood an ordinary guy. His laid-back appearance discouraged and confused Rachel. This stranger looked at him with his huge, harmless eyes, so he began to calmly approach Rachel Ackman. What was in his head was not understood by the expression of his face, but the expression on the scientist's face clearly showed a shock. He did not understand who this guy is and what he was doing. Well, he suddenly passed by Rachel. Without even looking at him, the guy headed for the bed where Shawn Ren was lying. She was unconscious and without a hand. Rochelle asked in surprise who this guy is, but he did not answer and just looked at the wounded captain. And then he turned to the scientist and said that he was behaving like a child who began a puberty. No humanity, logic, and meaning. However, the guy himself is not a person, but this does not allow himself. Rochelle was desperately stared at the stranger. He noticed a very strange shine in his eyes, and then he screamed, asking the guy to explain himself and his actions. Well, it just held out his hand forward and released a little energy. At this moment, the sword behind the scientist began to move. Soon he began to completely obey the guy and took off. All that the MUC Chin said is that he does not talk to people. And then, with one movement of the finger, he began to control the sword. He took off and flew right past the head of the scientist. And then, in a second, he was in the hands of the IOC Jin. Rochelle certainly did not understand these actions. He decided to use the ability of telekinesis, but did not find anything inside the guy. Then how did he do it? Really used ancient martial art. It was very bad for the scientist. This stranger appeared very on time. This stupid trauma from the poison of that girl is also. And the guy just looked harmlessly at Rachel. Then he sharply put a sword to his head. Mok Chin said that Rochelle is not a man, and not even a warrior. There were a lot of thoughts in his head. But Rochelle ordered the guy to shut up and attacked. Naturally, his attack did not give anything, and he missed. And suddenly he felt an acute pain in his hand. Mach Chin, without making efforts, did with him what he did with S.E. Ren. But Rochelle was a robot, so it was difficult for him to feel pain. Mach Chin turned to him and said that he had returned the debt. He was insanely offended by S.E. Ren, who was still unconscious. At what cost was such a confrontation? Then he warned the scientist that he needed to be prepared, for his anger went off scale. His energy became stronger and stronger, creating a flash. Richel's hands sparkled, and he realized that he was not lucky. First, that strange girl, and now this stranger. Due to the injury, Richel's performance was only 40%. Now he knew that he had no chance of victory. Therefore, he decided to use the operation of the internal drive. He dispersed it to the maximum, and even the system said that it was dangerous. Richel's eyes lit up red. He was not going to give up. However, he exceeded the limit and could not control the temperature, but this did not surprise the guy. And then he heard a hoarse voice from the bunk who wanted Richel to leave this world. The guy did not turn around and realize that this was woke up by S.E. Ren. She was exhausted, but with a gleam in her eyes looked at the Mach Jin. She, only stuttering, said that self-destruction would now happen. Then the guy realized that the matter was bad and looked at the scientist. He split into pieces as if he had become a bomb. There was no fear in the eyes of the IOC Jin, only surprise. Scientist. The robot caught fire, flashed brightly. This flash was so bright that it lit up the entire laboratory. At this time, Robert was still fighting off droids. But his missile store ended, and a photon cannon needed reloading. It was already impossible to shoot a laser, as he needed repairs. Fire. Resistant clothes should also be replaced. However, there were still many robots, and they surrounded Robert. The suit was out of order, and it seemed less to the enemies. Suddenly, Robert extended his hand and ordered the droids to stop and let him relax. Don't I know who is facing them? He was Karubta, the first sergeant of a special tactical squadron of the combat group of the Northern Galaxy. He can fight without his suit, which will only interfere now. But the robots should not be afraid of him. He will simply smash them to dust. After that, Robert took out his knives and rushed into the attack completely without protection. He rushed and jumped over them. However, unexpectedly, the man noticed strange lighting. A very bright light began to ooze from one of the craters. He illuminated the entire planet, like a bright sun. Because of him, soon nothing was visible at all. Fortunately, Robert had dark glasses. Therefore, he was able to straighten up and see what was happening. He lifted his knives triumphantly. Before him, a whole eruption began from the crater. It was something like a real nuclear explosion. This flash was clearly visible from the surface of the planet, and this saw a shocked spectacle of sun bomb. His assistant said that an explosion of a giant electromagnetic field was discovered on the satellite of the volcano. Bomu did not like this information, but he demanded to continue. The assistant continued that explosions of the electromagnetic field of such power can only be for military purposes. He was concerned that the human government could be mixed with this. But Bomb's dream ordered everything to be removed. They did not do anything, and this surprised the captain of the ship. However, the order is an order, and it had to be implemented. This explosion could not be prevented. The secretary of those in of his cosmic ball also watched him. The closest to the epicenter of events was Robert. All the robots, to his surprise, fell to the ground at a moment. And the first thing Robert thought about is their captain. He rushed to Crater, shouting loudly her name. It was as if it were vital to know where S.E. Ren, and suddenly he saw a bright glow again. The spark seemed to fly a small flashlight. Looking closely, he saw the IOC Zin and Seven in his arms. She was very wounded and was unconscious. The guy's face looked very sad. Robert did not know what to tell her, thinking about the worst. He was madly glad that his captain survived, although he was badly injured. Soon, the volcano returned to normal. Flowers began to grow again in this place. All people who were used as experimental have already returned to everyday life. Fortunately, they do not remember anything, as if there was nothing. In this place, the master was sitting from the security department, not believing in what was happening. The secretary of those in said that this was possible because the entropy version was commercialized. The old man told the secretary to speak more clearly because not all geniuses like him. Then they explained that inverse entropy is a technology that manipulates time. Even experiments with her were prohibited due to fears that they could potentially lead to the formation of a multiverse. That scientist not only improved technology, but reached the conversion of all the people involved in the experiment. In addition, he created all possible forbidden unknown technologies, such as unilateral teleportations, the rest of the soldiers. He is a genius who surpasses rumors. And then the old man suggested that the military leaders of the human government could be his allies. They are greedy, and even bamboo can be turned into a bomb and blowing up the world. But the secretary replied that they did not know for sure whether Richel Ackman died. Then his master ordered to find out whether he was alive, and those in unquestioningly agreed to fulfill the order. But the master also added that if the scientist survived, it is better to destroy him. However, who uses their martial arts? So Mok Chin became objectionable to the government. Therefore, the secretary was to fulfill the order of the master. He again sat on his small ship in the lotus pose. That is how he moved around the cosmos and retained the peace of mind. At this time, the whole team was in Raisin. They spoke a Chin San, to whom Ku Rin had already told what had happened. He decided to thank for the salvation of his daughter and wife of the IOC Jin. He reached for a mug of tea and replied that that scientist was more likely a puppet than a traitor. There are many dark people, a secretary told him, some kind of child. Chok-san replied that this is so, because no matter what volcano was, not a single person could dare to do this. He had some assumptions, but the guy interrupted him and said that they would simply close his eyes and go on. Such an impudent statement struck the leader of Shasan. How could this guy see him through? Moreover, he made this conclusion at such a young age and with such calmness. Who is this guy really? The leader was the priority of the survival of almost 10,000 inhabitants, and pride was a luxury. And suddenly he decided to ask whether it is normal from the IOC of the IOC Jin's neglect of the deceased. He did not hear a single comment from the guy, so perhaps this may be normal. But the guy replied that he was just doing his job and decided to live, looking at the world from top to bottom. Now he is just trying to follow his fate. Chok-san was surprised at this logic and decided to ask the guy about his true appearance. But he replied that it was better to continue to live with his eyes closed, because this is only annoying. He got up and left, leaving the leader alone at the table. At the last moment, I decided to stop and turn around. He said that he knew little about this world, but he was interested in, is it possible to attach a severed limb? He knew that this was nonsense, but during these days he experienced many things that did not make sense, and now he just wanted to help his captain. So far, S.E. Ren has not yet recovered and was on the ship's ship. The guys put her in the capsule for recovery. Songjia carefully monitored the performance of her body. Every day she was getting better and better. After conducting another analysis, Songjia left the department. Robert immediately ran up to her and asked how S.E. Ren feels. Songjia replied that everything was not so smooth. Robert was scared and asked, is it all because of the lost hand? Songjia replied that the blood of the captain is full of poison is congenital, and the antidote does not exist. Now she is trying to neutralize it, but I gradually spread. Suddenly, Robert became furious and offered to take the girl to a normal hospital. But Songjia repeated that the antidote does not exist, and normal hospitals are only in K or Nebel. The captain will not be able to hold out for so long. Then Robert the pleading asked what to do. Songjia replied that it was better to prepare for farewell, because S.E. Ren said that when she dies, she would need to be attached to the shield and throw it into space. So S.E. Ren will travel endlessly in space, as she wanted. On this, Songjia was ready to spend all her money. Robert answered, examined by a removing Song with a completely drooping gaze. Songjia herself tried to behave absolutely calmly, and I found it on the corridor and went to the boiler to pour water. She silently looked at the filled glass, and then she suddenly took and poured it on her head. At least she could express sadness and cry, making tears. But suddenly she saw something behind the glass. A huge spaceship flew in front of their ship. Songjia did not know what was waiting for them, but was already wary. At first, she did not even know who was on this ship. It was a swordswoman of the Wild West watching the ship. She was heading to Mount Shasan to find out something curious. Soon, of course, this ship saw a San. He was insanely surprised. What is he doing in his modest monastery? His appearance clearly promised something was wrong. The guard of the mountain approached the leader and said that it was the ship Queen of the Western Sword. Chok-san recognized him, like Mrs. Kim En-hee, who was nicknamed the Master of the Sword from the Western Sky. The guard of Man San Chin added that they tried to establish a connection with her many times, but they never received an answer. Then the leader said that it seems that she is not going to meet with them, so they will leave it for later. Man Jongsun replied that here the territory of their clan. Even if she is a master of sword, such behavior is a manifestation of disrespect. But Chok-san told his guard to be calmer, because now the mountain is on restoration, and they do not need conflicts. The guard wanted to object, but the leader replied that patience is the most powerful force that they can use. They must wait until Shasan becomes strong enough. After these words, the leader turned and went into the chambers. The guard did not quite understand him because he contradicted himself. And at this time, the ship continued its journey. And Kim Ench decided to visit the IOC Jin. She came to ask him a few questions, but it may be useful in another. She saw Captain Siren and said with sympathy that she could help. Mok Jin asked if the swordsman can return her hand again. She replied that it was not so difficult. It is basic medicine, but it is much more difficult to cleanse her body from sending me to blood. The guy was surprised to learn this and realized that Ren from the Sachon family, and this explained her ignorance and absurdity. Kim and Hahu replied that the guy had extensive knowledge. A poisoning blood poison is a secret known only to the head of the Sachon family. Mok Chin looked at the woman and asked how much she knew about it, and if so, then he would ask her to cure Ren. And she noticed the sparkle of hopelessness in the guy's eyes, but silently agreed. And then Mok Jin asked what the swordswoman wants in return. She replied that she needed to meet with one person, and the guy should know where he is. Mok Jin heard that the woman's voice was friends with rage, which means she really has hatred for him. It seems that I have met the same hated type, and recently he met a man whom he would like to destroy. And if the goal of Engva is him, then she is already late, since this person is no longer here. But Enha objected and said that he was still alive. The problem is that he went into the shadow. It can be in the galactic nebula of Vista. There was one satellite, so she needed the help of a guy. There was a secret base, a depot of the army of the Southern Association of Mankind. Suddenly, a woman who stood in front of the capsule entered there. She held red robes in her hands. She looked completely unemotional, the word robot. Suddenly, a window with light opened in a small capsule. She shook all sharply as if exploding now. Well, fresh water flowed from this window. She flooded the room and flooded the woman's bare feet. She still continued to stand in front of an increasingly opening capsule. Soon she seemed to disappear, and a man turned out to be inside her. He sat, curled up, as if hiding from the outside world. The woman approached and covered it with a red cloth, congratulating it on a return to the life of the Count. He raised his head and everything became clear. The graph in the mask ended up in his body. He turned to the girl and asked who she was. She replied that her name is Rachel Acamond, and she was his second half. She added that in a minute, all the memories will return to him. The scientist looked at her and began to remember. This is his robot. Rachel was an exact copy of the swordsman of Kim Enva. She was programmed as an assistant to the Count. Now the swordsman of the West talked with the IOC Jin and told him about the depot of drones, where the Count is hidden. The problem is that this place is controlled by the government of mankind. Mok Chin was surprised at the fright of Enva because the government of mankind is something like a chancellery. He remembered how the secretary of the Molokosos also mentioned this. Enha thought for a long time, because I had not heard this word that disappeared several thousand years ago. But the guy was right. The government of mankind is an office that tries to stay with the world of martial arts at a safe distance. Mok Jin understood that they would not come close, because this is the habit of officials still did not go away. And Hahi noticed that the guy was saying as if he had returned from the past. Well, he decided to leave it for later and asked what he needed to do. And Hahu replied that it was necessary to distract the attention of the planetary guard. They fully guard all the entrances and the perimeter around the depot. General Bernardo, the head of the guard, was talking with Count Richel Ackman right now. He heard that he introduced a real house and destroyed the laboratory. But the Count replied that they were faced with troubles, so I had to destroy all the evidence. The general noted that the language of the scientist was suspended and still sharp. Only now he was not sure that this charm would work for investors of the project. If they find out that Richel lost everything, his head is unlikely to calm them down. But the Count replied that there was no failure. The project of the Steel Hour was only a preparatory stage. It received all the data, so this is success. Now they are launching the main project, a Ginger Hour. But suddenly General Bernardo stopped Richel with his companion. He asked if Richel could create the same thing for him, which constantly walks his tail. Richel realized that we were talking about Rachel Acamond, his creation. The general smiled and said that he was already tired of sitting in the wilderness. If it is difficult to create, Richel could just let his doll use for several days. The scientist decided not to give out his anger and replied that he would think about it. His robot was an exact copy of the swordswoman of the West, which still could not forget. When he went out, the general quoted that he was treating this Count as a man, and he would imprudent, but it was already purely their problems. Now the narrative is moving back to Shasan, where it was raining. More precisely, these were the memoirs of S.E. Ren, in which Kim En-ch fell. She did not understand why the girl's memories are so gloomy. It always seemed that she was very light and cheerful. Well, it turns out that a little girl wears a rather strong mask, hiding behind her. Seren simply stared down and did nothing. And Ha held out her hand and said to go with her, because she came for her. But the girl replied that she did not want to. She should guard this passage. And Hahu replied that her task had long remained in the past and she had nothing more to defend. When it disappeared, S.E. Ren was left completely alone in his imaginary world. Again invited her to return, but she had a tantrum. After all, she was ready to protect this passage at the cost of life. And suddenly, she felt that the sword was inside her. It was Yin who unexpectedly attacked her. She said that if S.E. Ren continues to resist, she will have to take her by force. The girl's eyes opened sharply with horror. She woke up and found that she was in a huge capsule, and her hand was intact. Kim En-hyu at this time was inside an unusual device. It charged the inner drivers of the swordsman. When the charging reached 86%, she asked how S.E. Ren feels. The girl looked at the swordswoman with misunderstanding, but one thing is clear, she saved her. Manhwa said that it would be not easy to get used to the new hand. Focus on rehabilitation until the nervous network is recovering. Si-Ren thanked the girl for salvation and promised to pay her off. But she replied that S.E. Ren is too high about herself. Duty is what people of the same level share. No matter how great her connection with the Sichuan clan was, she does not mean anything for Yenva. That could spend all her inner strength for her sake, definitely not worth it. Then Si-Ren asked, why then the swordswoman saved her? But she replied that the girl was not entitled to know. But keeping poison in the heart and even so long, it is impressive. Still a little bit and I would have to leave him in the girl. This is the most dangerous poison in the world, accessible only to the head of the clan, and it seems that rumors did not lie. And suddenly, S.E. Ren demanded to return her to her poison in the form of a small insect, because this is her soul. Suddenly, the device said that the drive was completely charged. After that, Yenhe said that Seiran activated the poison and chose death, which means that the poison does not belong to her anymore. So this little insect is no longer her. The girl desperately looked into the hand of Envo with her poison, and suddenly the swordsman extended her hand and said that the poison of S.E. Ren would still return. In return, she will tell everything that she knows about this person, and only the truth. She is tired of asking what kind of person we were talking about, and then it dawned on her that the swordsman was talking about the IOC Zine. She herself really did not know anything about this guy, who was now with the leader of Shan. Chok-san again came for one reason, the desire to repay for the guy's favor. He replied that this was nonsense, since he did it of his own free will, so there will be enough cup of tea. Chok-sanya understood this, but between the debtor and the creditor is a big difference, and the Juwasan clan was not used to being in debt. Therefore, the leader decided to give advice on duty. Stay away from the Queen of the Western Sword. She is a poisonous spider living in a dark abyss, and right now with her was S.E. Ren. Leave out of the room. The girl felt someone's presence. It turned out she saw Elena standing at the door. Songjong already said that everything that surrounds the swordsman of the West is immersed in darkness. So Elena was just as gloomy and did not pay attention to anything. But she told S.E. Ren that she was happy early that she survived because she would destroy her with her own hands. So Ren was surprised. Was there a duty between them? But Elena answered evil that this was all because her mother saved S.E. Ren's life. She never spared even her own children. But Siran grinned and replied that the apple from the apple tree obviously does not fall. But Elena cried out so that Seven Ren was seriously reacted to this. She would definitely destroy her. Seren replied that if Elena wants to, then let her destroy her. She does not care. But suddenly she stopped, as if she remembered something. Turning around, S.E. Ren once again looked at the angry Elena. She asked why she treats her to you. How old is she? It is not known how this skirmish ended, as the conversation goes to the IOC Jin. He thanked for the information of the leader of Shasan, but said that he himself would figure it out. But Chok-san said that Manhwa has exactly some intentions that they do not expect. She definitely wants to get the IOC Jin. There are legends that if a man meets the Queen of the Western Ball, he is no longer able to leave her. She always does everything to achieve her. Chok-san himself met her in his youth, and she wanted a child from him. And Ha said that a child with genes would be a perfect creature. She was dazzlingly beautiful, breathed directly. But Chok-san refused this proposal because he already had a bride. Sometimes he still regrets that he refused her. He heard that more than 100 men agreed to her conditions. All of them gave her their genes for the sake of future offspring. They were in love with her, just like Count Rochelle. But she threw everyone, and the Count even created her copy in the form of a robot. That is why the swordswoman of the West was nicknamed the Poisonous Spider. As a black widow, she eats a male after a marriage ritual. Mok Chin suggested that she clearly has a lot of children. Choksan replied that there are more than 100 of them, as much as nature gave. The guy was surprised. Is it really possible? How old is she then? Choksan replied that everything was not so because children are grown in the laboratory by genetic culture. Therefore, you can create at least 100 at the same time. Mok Chin once again said that the world has changed beyond recognition. But why does she need so many children? Because it is difficult to raise. Choksanya replied that she wants to create a perfect, absolute creature so that it embodied her unfulfilled dreams. But, as they say, she failed to create a perfect child. And now she has such a talented IOC Chin in her way. Therefore, Choksan advised him to be careful because it was dangerous to approach her. The guy got up only replied that it was very sorry. The leader was clearly surprised at such an answer. Mok Chin would even like the swordswoman to be in his taste, because sometimes he thought about the child. He got up and began to leave, and the shocked Chok San looked after him. At this time, S.E. Ren, completely healthy, returned to the ship. Robert then hugged her from childish joy. Si Ren said he was too sticking, but Robert continued to hug her. He said that the girl is tense and they are one team and he was so worried about her. Songja was also very happy about the captain's return and hugged her. But she turned only to the IOC Zhang, who was sitting at the table, because she heard that he saved her. She needed to hear the answer only to one question. She asked if her IOC Chin is older than her. He stared at her with a sausage on a fork but did not answer. Si Ren knew that, because if he does not deny, then he agrees, and he is much older than her. She can call him an uncle or even a grandfather. And suddenly she burst out a sausage from his hands, saying, "No longer this muck. Now they will feed it only with organic products that are good for health." After all, such as the IOC Jin, nothing solid is nothing. But suddenly the guy got angry and said that if S.E. Ren wants to live on, they would let the sausages be given. He clearly did not appreciate the care of the captain and was angry more and more. At this time, Yung Ri Tek, Chapter 32 of the County of the Crunty of Heavenly Demon, talked with Kim Engvoy. He was surprised that the girl contacted him and told this. And Kyubyu said that 2,000 years ago, a man that he imprisoned himself in the underground hall on Taisan is the IOC Jin. He is definitely connected with the cult of the Heavenly Demon. But Ritek had in mind a slightly different information after. And Hugh said that he called himself a great heavenly lord. Ritek was extremely surprised at this information. Is this one? And so far only they knew about it. And Count Rochelle worked again. In his laboratory, he decided to create a new robot. He was sure that he would succeed. However, he still looked at his devices with excitement. Soon, data loading was completed to 100%. Lasers created a microchip using the latest technologies. Rachel Akamon robot said that the input and output of data is stable. The Count asked, "What about power?" Rachel replied that the maximum power is 8.5 caps, and its excess would lead to self-destruction. Rochelle said pretty that it turned out perfectly. Then, he ordered the new device to approach his master. At that very moment, the device, similar to the chip, vibrated, and then jumped right into Rachel's hand. He looked at his creation again. It was a small spider like a bug, and the Count decided to show it to General Bernardo. And while the soldiers poured him tea, Bernardo asked what it was. He looked at this strange invention and did not understand anything. The Count replied that this was what the general ordered. Bernardo said that this is some kind of joke, because the Sangan project is the transformation of the animal body into a combat android. He must merge in the crowd so that no one suspects that this is not a person. At the same time, it has beyond human skills, but looking at this creation, it is clear that it is not like a person. But Rochelle explained that soon it will become very similar to a person. At this moment, a strange spider jumped out of the Count's hand. He jumped right on his face to the soldier nearby, and then suddenly he climbed into his nose. The soldier screamed with fright, not understanding what was happening. And suddenly his body began to fever, and the veins swelled with tension. General Bernardo already jumped in surprise, and the soldier's body continued to wriggle. Count Rochelle explained that this is a parasitic android that penetrate the body, paralyzes the brain nerves, and then they obey the nervous system, that is, it turns infected into living android. He frees up to 8.5 caps of energy, turning infected into an unsurpassed master. In addition, he has loaded the most effective destructive combat equipment. Thus, this is a perfect weapon for destruction, Sangan. However, the general noted that a modified soldier looks very strange. He was no longer like an ordinary person. His body shed from mount of muscles. The Count said that the genetics of the test sample is different. When the body's immune system resists, strange deformations occur, and suddenly a strange bug jumped out, and the changed body of the soldier fell to the ground. The general once again stared at a strange invention. Then Rochelle told him to prepare a show for tomorrow. The prototype is ready, and it is time to demonstrate it to investors so that they no longer molest. The general exclaimed that Rochelle lost his mind. Is the result of work for 5 billion loans is a disgusting monster. The Count replied that he already has the owner with whom he would work as it should. Then Rochelle ordered the device to go to his master. The peasant jumped out and headed straight to the general. However, he suddenly flew past him. He struck the glass in the window and flew to the owner. Bernardo again stared at the scientist in surprise. But he turned around and said, "And tell everyone that tomorrow they will present a complete prototype." At this time, the bug has already flown out of the surface of the planet. He had to move into the owner and become a perfect Sengal, and, oddly enough, he flew towards the IOC Jin. The guy was in surprise in the window, seeing a glow. He noticed a split meteorite soaring in the air. The captain of the ship came running to this message. Songja said that this is a border zone, and if you get closer, they will cross the guard line. Siran frantically thought she was answering. Suddenly, Robert said that there is a landfill of military droids belonging to the government of mankind. If they are discovered, they will be declared enemies, and just like that, they will not leave. However, the signal of the swordswoman of the West was spotted 4,770 kilometers from them, on the other edge of the border. Siran clearly did not like this absolutely safe place. She ordered to prepare a landing capsule, warning that if everything goes wrong, then they are not familiar. After that, to Robert's surprise, the girl headed for the IOC Jin. She came up and said they arrived. But then they have to go only together so as not to endanger other danger. The guy asked why they were going together, because he could do it alone. Siren insisted that they needed to go together because she should control the capsule. But Robert said that she can be launched on autopilot, but the captain drives just disgusting. But S.E. Ren replied that she did not only in this. She had her own accounts with this type. Robert wanted to dissuade the girl from danger, but she was adamant. Then Mokjin again invited her to stay, because she has much more important obligations. Hearing this, the girl's awareness seemed to have changed. The guy said to think about his team again. Living the past means to go back. The closer it is to the past, the farther from life. Having said this, the guy left, leaving the captain with Robert in silence. At this time, General Bernardo watched his project. According to the scientist's report, the prototype of the project was completed. They say that he will be presented at the show tomorrow, and according to General's calculations, a chance to failure still existed. Therefore, he proposed to first check the device and then arrange a show. But the order on the other side of the screen sounded clearly. You need to start the show tomorrow. The general doubted. After all, he can fail. But the subscriber replied that he had already failed, because people from the Shasan school were used for tests. This is secret information, but it has become known, and the commission is already in investigation. If it becomes known that they use these people as experimental, this will lead to serious consequences. It is necessary to do it. It will be possible. The note, it will not be possible. It will also be delay. There will be no scandals anymore. After that, the subscriber dropped the phone, leaving the general one in his thoughts. He did not understand how he managed to contact such a monster. And suddenly, he sharply felt something was wrong due to the sound of the siren. She reported that outsiders penetrated the guarded zone. It simply cannot be. Are they really falling away now? It was madly at the wrong time. But the capsule was already landing. She fell by creating a small crater. There were also strange technologies on the surface of the planet. Seeing them, Mokjin definitely decided to figure it out completely. The emergency signal from the droid landfill has just been recorded. This news soon reached Kim Enva. She was wondering who would become the new owner of the Count, and it has already reached its goal. Generally, Ren looked in surprise at a little bug on her flower. It was an insect that she had not seen before, but where did it come from here? And suddenly this strange insect jumped on it. But so far no one knew about it, and the Count was surprised only one. How could this guy be here? Is it possible to get through the defense? And what does he need? General Bernardo calmly drank coffee. He looked at Jin's IOC through the screen and said that it was a biological creature. He did not have martial arts like weapons. Judging by the lack of records in the database, it seems that this is not a registered tramp from the distant outskirts. But it is strange that a simple torn broken here, but this is clearly not his best day. This does not justify violations of their border, so the order was given to eliminate it. At the same second, the armed robot rose from the sand. He immediately went to his goal. But then Rochelle burst into the hall to the general and shouted that this guy was not so easy to overcome. Bernardo was surprised at the scared face of the scientist, but he ordered to immediately go into the highest degree of combat readiness to use all expressive systems. The general relaxedly replied that this is a common biological form. The robot will destroy it, so there is no need to panic like that. But suddenly on the screen it was displayed that the robot scattered into the particles, running up to the guy. The general did not believe his eyes and thought it was a mistake in the system. But the Count had already seen such protective equipment and asked to analyze this martial art. If necessary, it is better to connect to the main data center of the central government. Rochelle already pressed the call button, which caused the general's discontent because he commanded. Rochelle shouted that now is not the time for quarrels. If this project fails, the general also does not concrete. They need any price to stop this guy, even if Bernardo only pick up the crumbs of power. When the Count turned and left, the general stunned with his impudence. At this time, the offender moved to line 2 line. The laser guns of the guards' droids were ready for departure. The general was sure that the guy could not cope with this. However, he ordered to activate the statue of Buddha to destroy it with one blow. Rochelle also raised everyone to his ears to speed up his project. He contacted his robot Rachel to take the project. She was near the next laboratory. She waited until her goal appeared on the horizon. It was enough to Ren, in which the parasite was already sitting. Rachel said that the object had come and she took it. Ren was no longer expressing any emotions with him. At this time, the base struggled with the IOC Zinvortum. She released a small air spot in him. At first, Emok Jin did not even understand the danger of this thing. But the whirlwind has turned into a real tornado. It went straight to the guy, but he only grinned. In this world, he was no longer surprised. But suddenly a statue of Buddha arose from behind the veil. The guy stared at her and asked who he was. But the old extended to him his huge stone hand. The guy did not move and only looked in surprise, and his stone hand crushed him to the floor. Weehor began to hug slowly. From the surface of the planet, it looked like a real storm. Looking at the screen, the general was sure that this was the end. But even he did not really understand what was happening. The Count raised a big hype from behind some nonsense. Then Bernardo ordered to pick up the guy and find out his personality. But suddenly the system said that video signals are fixed and the state of the guy is normal. The general did not believe it because how can a crushed person be alive? Moreover, he was in perfect order. Suddenly, a bright light poured from the hand of the statue. He seemed to pierce the hand of the stone Buddha. Now Bernardo was really worried. This stranger just flew out from under his hand. The guy took off and stared at a huge whirlwind. Then the general ordered to destroy him immediately. At that moment, red light poured from the whirlwind, as if some kind of energy flew out of it. But the guy, watching this, said that the true power of the statue of the Buddha in the void. How did she become so muttered by rough cruelty? This is a fake, only outwardly reminiscent of the original. A huge hand reached out of the red veil to the guy. She radiated light and powerful destructive energy. But this hand also split to smithereens from the power of the IOC Jin. He moved too quickly and flew through it. And then he went straight to the head of the statue. Then he pierced her with all his strength. Watching this, the general almost went crazy. Where does this stranger get such power? He could not even believe that this actually was happening. But the guy, landing, said that this is empty, but he made his head Buddha. Now he is definitely destined to go to paradise. At this moment, a whole bunch of robots broke up. They all fled to attack an unwanted object. And Rochelle all this time tried to identify the guy's martial arts. He realized that this is the technique of a sword of demonic Asura based on the mental art of the heavenly demon. The fact that the guy is connected with the cult was even more strongly strained the Count. He ordered General Bernard to contact, but there was silence around. Apparently, the connection was disconnected, so he demanded to include it in such an emergency situation. But the voice behind said that it was useless. It will not be possible to contact anyone anyway. And this voice Rochelle would have learned from a million others. After all, this is the voice of the one that he loved all this time. He turned around and recognized its owner, Kim Manhwa, but she did not like that Rochelle so simply called her name. Apparently, they had a strong connection before. Rochelle was upset. Does his lover really not remember him? Perhaps the fact is that he changed due to an accident during the experiment and lost half his face. Growth and physique also changed from that night 25 years ago. It was then that the swordsman appeared to him in the laboratory in the star galaxy. The Count remembered this moment as if he were yesterday. He immediately liked the beauty of the girl, and he even forgot about his research. Looking at her, he asked who she was, but Yenha only said that the Count is prettier than the rumors say. He is the most talented scientist in history and even beautiful, which means she was very lucky. She wanted the child from him, because if she unites the Kift, it will be the most perfect creature in the world. And this is all she needed from the scientist. He could not believe his happiness, but did not know how much misfortune he would bring. He madly fell in love with this girl, but she does not even remember him. Then he cried out, asking again, did she remember him? But she only replied that she did not keep memories of the failures. This wounded the soul of the scientist even more. But Yenhui said that he again forced her to remember that moment, and it was very painful. Therefore, she took a sword and became opposite Richel to attack. At this time, Mok Jin fought with other enemies, and each of his pirouette was surprised by Bernard. The system said that 73% of the border troops were lost. The continuation of the Crow was impossible, and the support of the headquarters was required. But the general did not have time to do anything. The explosion was heard behind him. He was even afraid to turn around, knowing that he was waiting. But the guy suddenly walked directly past him. Bernardo asked in a shocked voice what he was. But he replied that it was better for the general to write this in the report. And if there are questions, then they will discuss them personally. But now he was wondering where he was the unfinished monster. He was looking for Count Richel, who was still shocked by the fact that he was called a failure. He shouted that Enha was mistaken and he was not defeated. He knew her dream. Her crazy desire to become an absolutely strong, invincible creature. And he was not mistaken, she was mistaken because she herself left him, and this is her mistake. He completed what he sacrificed to everyone, and gave everything for this. But she does not even remember him. Richel did not have time to finish his whining. The girl struck him with a sword. The Count was taken aback, being completely disappointed. Then Yenhu said she remembered him. But the more she recalls, the less pleasant it is for her. He chatted a lot, even then that time, but Richel did not even know that some more followed him. Mok Chin was able to get into the laboratory, but he found the Count with exhausted and leaning on the column. He was clearly wounded, but it is not yet clear how much. Taking a closer look, the guy understood all the details. At that moment, Ench did not hesitate even for a split second. Even if it was a useless acquaintance, she did not value her fate at all. But then Richel strangled not to poke his nose, where they did not ask. He was sure that his lover simply did not know his true value. Soon she will recognize and see everything, and then she will never forget him. But the Emok Jin told the Count to forget everything that was with him, because he was soon the end. Oblivion is the most precious gift of death and it must be accepted. But Richel said that he would not die, because his perfection would live in his own creation. It is it that will forever prove its value. Suddenly the guy returned and saw at the entrance Rachel and Ku Rin. However, they looked strange and did not react to anything. This is especially a young girl alarmed the guy. He immediately realized that the Count did something with her. There was a complete emptiness in her gaze. He immediately ran to this child and asked what happened. But when she did not answer him, he understood everything. Suddenly there was an explosion right next to the guy. The Count lowered his head, smiling slyly. His beloved robot just looked at him. At this time, in the general's office, there was a voice of the system that they lost 91% of protective structures. Losses in the energy unit are 86%, and they cannot be restored. The system prepared ships and ordered to evacuate, but the general was indignant. He did not give such an order. Can they really not be able to cope with some boy? Well, suddenly, he heard a voice that said that he had given the order, and he did it out of respect for an old friend. And the dust of the soldier appeared and looked at Bernard. She said that if the general wants to meet death with dignity, she could stay here. This will definitely give him some significance. A ship suddenly appeared in the sky. Next to him was the small ship of S.E. Ren. The team members all this time observed and worried about the IOC Jin. Siren looked at this colossus in surprise, not understanding where she came from. Songja said, "This is a warp scam." The captain was surprised that such a vague was able to commit him. But Robert said that now the main thing is a sign on the ship. This sign was familiar to everyone in the galaxy. The drawn spiral on the bottom indicated only one. The owners of the ship were the human government. However, the IOC Jin did not yet know about such reinforcements. He fought with Rin, trying not to injure her. The girl was clearly infected with something. Her body did not belong to her anymore and shone, as if exploding now. Suddenly, the guy heard Rachel's mocking voice. He turned and asked what he did with the girl. The Count replied that he created this, his continuation, proof of his real value. That power is just the beginning because it is a child, an empty bowl that can be filled with anything, until it itself reaches the peak of existence. Suddenly, Rachel turned to the Count and said that he needed to relax and engage in wounds. But he replied that he had already finished, and Rachel knows this because she was from creation. But the robot seemed to show sympathy and felt sorry for its master. But the Count gave her free will and allowed her to live as she wanted. Then, to the horror of his robot, he destroyed himself. He took himself a small heart he had made. He said that he would give him his creation. Rachel, let her enjoy the strength and lives as she wants, stomping this world. In the end, he said that no one would dare to look into her eyes, after which he was dumb and no longer said a word. Rachel stared at the heart that fell out of his hands. She could not help but fulfill the last order of her master. But suddenly some voice stopped her and ordered her to stop. It was Mokjin, who said that the life of a madman was already too long. It is better not to listen to him, but to return Rin to be the previous state, and this is an order that he will not repeat twice. But Rachel replied that this was not the life of a madman, because he lived truly, passionately, and decisively. And let the guy not worry, her life is also finished. The Count gave her free will and she will live as she wanted. Now she can do as she always dreamed. Rachel stared at Rin, from which destructive energy oozed. Well, the robot was not afraid of her and came closer. She hugged Rin and said that now she would receive freedom. But she will finally have only one order, and the girl will have to fulfill it when they meet again. At this time, the swordswoman of the West had already returned to the ship and ordered everyone to leave. But Rachel continued to hug Rin and asked her to hug her if she did not meet again. Let her hug her as much as she can. After that, Rachel evaporated in the air, leaving the girl alone. Grand Rin could not withstand the tension and fell to the ground. Mok Chin was anxious, immediately looked at her. He hoped that she would give some signs of life. At this time, in the general's office, there was another message that a combat cruiser of the Leviathan class was discovered in orbit. Apartment. A commission for the supervision of the human government. Bernardo was calm until the ship himself saw. He looked at him in dismay, realizing that it was an orbital shelling. There were many guns on the ship. Robert, looking at him, said that this is a complete mess because the ship belongs to regular troops. So now they will definitely die. Siren asked why the ship is not moving then. Did they really not notice them? This is possible because the elephant will not see the mouse of his legs. But the dream of Jia said that the elephant's eyes were excellent, and they had long noticed them. As if in confirmation of her words, a hologram arose behind them. It was a familiar general who appeared to him on the ship before. Siren looked in surprise in front of her, a stranger. He had a kind and thoughtful look. Robert asked who she was, but the girl did not answer and drew attention to Tan Siren, the last of the family of Sachin. Siren did not understand how she knew this, but the girl said not to be afraid and believed that they did not meet, because she wiped it out of the report on the way here. She did not want to mess around. The work of the Sachin family is the jurisdiction of the Intersectors Exchange Department. Now she cannot do not work on her work, since a purely official, so she will pretend that she did not notice them. But suddenly, in her headphone, they said about an urgent report for the committee, where the results of the investigation of the anomaly on the satellite were the results of the investigation. Due to the unknown malfunction, a quantum power plant was overheated, which paralyzed the control center. This caused a droid riot, and control and restoration are now impossible. She was asked for permission to change in terms of operation and recommended a new plan. Siren got angry, not understanding what was going on for nonsense with these droids. Songji replied that everything was fine and all the droids were disconnected. The captain asked why then this whole circus. Songja replied that according to their plan, the use of local orbital shelling in the framework of emergency regulations was allowed. Further actions, at the discretion of the commander on the spot. This girl can now give any order. But she smiled and said that, fortunately, everything was without unnecessary problems, and then calmly ordered to launch the fire. At that moment, the guns of her ship rushed down. A laser left the ship that struck the land of the satellite. It feels like he lowered something to the surface, and this something fell among the ruins and ruins from robots. It was like a little top, and suddenly he, like a drill, began to screw into the ground. He buried deeper, deeper, and deeper, deeper. The girl said that everything was worked out well, and in the report it can be put in 3 lines. And then she told the guys to run if they want to survive on this miserable ship, 5 minutes before it is halfway to another galaxy. Then she added that it was hoping that they would no longer cross, because she could not stand fuss. The next second, she evaporated, as if she had not been. Ren, looking at the empty place where the hologram was, asked what she had in mind. Robert shouted that she had gone crazy, allowed the use of orbital shelling. Ren asked in surprise, "What is it?" Robert replied that this is a weapon that destroys the satellite or even the entire planet. He heard about it but did not believe that this really exists, and the captain could not believe it either. Songja said that this is quite possible, because the fact that they had just released was breaking through the satellite's nucleus. When it explodes, the satellite simply will not. They have 3 minutes left. They need to urgently evacuate. And when Songja was already ready, the captain still thought. Robert asked what she was waiting for, but the girl seemed to be stuck on something through the porthole. That strange stranger now cooked weapons for the attack. She then watched the planet slowly collapse, and then she ordered to blow her up. At first, the device did not show any signs of life. But then suddenly, the stones from the planet began to rise up. It looked like someone got out of the ground. A real secret base appeared from under it. Complete destruction was expected in 2 minutes and 7 seconds. The ship commander ordered to prepare for a shockwave and activate the energy shield 100%. And then she decided to reduce it to 80%, deciding that it would be more interesting. The surface of the planet was heated stronger and stronger. And suddenly another small ship appeared next to the ship. The girl noticed that everything was going according to plan. In this ship was General Bernardo, who tried to escape. But he did not understand why Ren's ship remained, because only dust could remain from them. And suddenly the engines of her ship lit up. The commander of the ship of the government of mankind looked at this in surprise. She did not understand why this small ship flies directly to the planet. Ren, sitting behind the wheel, as if racing to certain death. Robert shouted that they would all die and they would not be saved. But the captain said that everything would be fine because she has a long line of life in her palm and she will definitely live up to 80. Songja sadly replied that she had no lines, and the system, if nothing happens, would live up to 50,000 years. But it was still nonsense compared to what was happening on the planet now. Its surface exploded and heated, flying into the air. Songja said that the explosion of the nucleus began, and the atmosphere temperature grows rapidly. She had already reached 300 degrees, and Robert was sure that now they were definitely the end. But then radar Songja discovered signs of life. At this time, the temperature was heated to 700 degrees, and so the guys noticed the Jin in a huge bubble, and with Grabrin in their arms. His skin began to burn from high temperature. His face and hands were covered with burns, but nothing on his face expressed pain, only interest in what was happening. This Heaton house was like in hell. Is this really the end for them? A huge demon appeared in front of him, who was ready to devour him. The guy asked why he did not come yesterday, because then he would gladly go towards him. Today he cannot, because he must save this poor child. He is obliged to keep his promise, to protect Grand Rin at all costs. So now the demon will have to retreat, but the guy swore that as soon as the girl was safe, he would find him. But it turned out that this is not a demon, but the light from the ship of his team. Ran shouted the guy to climb on board more likely. At this time, the surface temperature had already reached 1,500 degrees, and the explosion should have occurred after 10 seconds. And although the signal of life was recorded on the surface of the planet, the girl did not do anything. She understood that when the core explodes, this temperature would exceed 6,000 degrees. At what temperature do not even the gods live? But for her it was fine, even though you will not have to write a report. But Ren's ship was already racing away and the girl asked Songja to open a gateway. The guy entered the ship, but still not to the end. Songja said that outside the temperature is already exceeding 2,000 order, and if they open the gateway the rest of the account will be destroyed. Thus, they will simply burn alive. There was only 1 second before the explosion. And then, finally, this happened, and the satellite exploded. Ren was fascinated at what was happening. Robert has already mentally met his death. Losses of energy of the ship's shields were 93%. This small explosion has become another falling star in space. However, oddly enough, the MOK Chin survived. Someone in a national suit approached him towards him. The guy Doom raised his eyes and saw the monk. More precisely, he looked like a monk ready to take him into another world. But the guy knew who it was, and certainly did not expect to see him. But the interlocutor replied that they were doomed to meet again, although he did not think that it would take 2,000 years. It turned out that it was a very old acquaintance of the Jin. Once upon a time, the guy came to his cave when it was pouring rain. The monk asked what he wants to ask him. They sat in a cave in the light of one candle. But the Emok Jin did not understand why this man is so sure that he has questions for him. The monk replied that if they were not there, then he would not have come here. Like, no way, this is the very edge of this world. Now all this looked like primitive society. The wet and tired IOC Chin sat opposite the monk, and he noticed that the guy was very tired. Approaching countless bodies, his knees and caviar trembled with the cold. Mok Chin asked if the monk knows who he is, but he smiled and replied that he had no idea. But I don't even know, you can see a lot. In him, his eyes seemed to be a small light. He saw little IOC Jin, the time when he was born. A small baby sat opposite two objects, an apple and a dagger. And then the monk said that even before this guy learned to walk, he was taken away from choosing his life path. The little boy was already reaching for the apple, but the shadows around him trampled the fruit. Mok Chin was upset and stared at the offender. He was formidable and large, like darkness itself. And then he had no choice but to take a dagger. And the man in the mantle smiled, approving the choice without a choice. Now the boy had to become a real warrior. His little hand became strong and courageous. Now she kept not a teddy knife but a sharp sword. He was talented and conquered many enemies. He literally walked over his head and stood at the top of this mountain. And instead of choosing, he ate death for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. He constantly fled somewhere until he met her. A beautiful warrior from the Shasan clan. She aroused sports interest in the guy. Well, even she could not satisfy his hunger. And looking into the eyes of the guy, the monk saw only death. He said that the IOC Chin lost the meaning of life. But the guy replied that he was very strong. The monk said that this is so, there is just nowhere stronger. Mok Jin could destroy another 100,000 of those who would dare to raise their heads in her presence. And the monk knew this, but the more the guy killed, the stronger his hunger became. Because blood is not food for a noble child. The guy seriously thought about these words. At this moment, the monk decided to answer his question. Even if he wants to stop this meaningless life, there is no one in this world who could do this. This is possible only his own choice. Mo Si. Chin said that if the monk invites him to end his life, then he cannot do it. The life of the IOC Jin did not belong to himself. If life does not belong to him, how can his death be him? It seems that the correct answer to this question does not exist. And then the monk said that he would allow the guy to fall asleep. Since he cannot but live, not die, he will send him to where there is no life, not death. This can be called an eternal dream, but it is possible to wake up. But if he is lucky to wake up once, perhaps a new path will open before him. And now this accidentally met man saved the IOC Zin and Rin. He said that the guy had changed in 2,000 years. Darkness on his shoulders became lighter. A spark appeared in his eyes. Did he really find a new path? But the IOC Jin replied that he only lost him. The Order of the Dark Horse had long dropped his shackles and came out. His only goal has disappeared and life has lost all meaning. Then the monk asked why the guy is still alive. At this time, the temperature in business for 4,000 degrees, the shields melted and lost the depravity. But the monk said that this is a great chance because if you just accept this heat, then the guy will burn to the ground and scatter ash. He will disappear as if he had never been, as he wanted. But then why does he keep his life so fiercely? Mok Chin replied that this was all because of the promise. He promised to protect this child, Klin Rin. The monk said that it was pointless. Death was erasing everything and there is no promises left. After all, the guy saw the universe. At the moment when he ran into her, he realized how insignificant he was. Is he just a dust that has no value? What is the meaning of promises for a speck of dust? Moreover, the name of the one whom he so desperately protects is even unknown to him. So it is better to let go of everything, and no matter how hard the guy tried, he will not be able to protect her. But the Mok Jin understood this, and knew that he would die anyway. But shouldn't you try to fight to the very end? Even if he burns, even if only a dust remains of him, he must give up the full. What is the matter of life in general? If death depreciates the path traveled, then life has been living in vain. Now he understood. Death can never put an end to life. And all this will be if living a life to leave significant memories. Life surpasses death. And the monk said to it that he had already stepped over the line of life and death and achieved eternity. And then, as he appeared, he began to disappear. And the spaceship was not in the best condition. It was significantly well damaged by the explosions. And soon the same explosion came. He lit up as brightly as the sun. The official of the official looked at him in surprise. It seems that God himself appeared among the clouds. A whole bright funnel began to attract all the dark. It was the hatch of the S.E. Ren ship, which glowed and attracted the light. The officials did not understand what it was. It was like a huge bright whirlpool, and all this was drawn to a small space boat. But soon the light stopped and everything subsided. The ship's hatch was broken, and the ship itself was covered with soot. No one could even imagine what happened there. Suddenly, this bright light, which seemed to be absorbed into the ship, poured back. He rushed to an exploded satellite, illuminating him. The official thought that some gods had come down. Well, S.E. Ren herself was even more surprised, looking from the scratched window of the ship. All this time, she did not doomedly look at the porthole that covered them from the entrance. There should have been the IOC Jin, but there was only a bright light. When he dissipated, the girl saw a long-haired, bright man. He was athletically complicated and looked like God. It was the true form of the warrior of the IOC Jin, who sacrificed Rin for the sake of snow. It was a pure and sincere victim of the warrior. Thanks to this, he was transformed and became the highest version of himself. Two ships still hung in space. The ship of the government of mankind and the boat S.E. Ren. Songja said that they completely lost the shield, the outer sheathing was damaged by 63%, and self-healing is impossible. The right engine did not work, and the rest of the electronic systems also failed. She told the captain that the repair would cost a whole fortune, but she first did not pay attention to this. He and Robert stared at Jin's IOC, who had entered the IOC. This guy, by some miracle, survived again, and suddenly that official appeared in front of them. She shouted and asked what they did, but S.E. Ren herself could not give an explanation of this. Then the official turned and also stared at the guy. He, as if nothing had happened, ate a mountain of sausages again. He looked like an ordinary person, but it was not so. The official was wondering what it was. There was no information about him in the database, and his identity was not established. Then she hit the table with all her might and asked how the guy could do this. How did he succeed and who is he at all? But from the response gaze of this stranger, the official was taken aback. He looked at her with his lifeless black eyes. That she saw in them her clear reflection. This look turned out to be very terrible and strong. Then Mokjin asked who she was. The girl, Zaika, replied that she was the senior administrator of Atina, and she was 24 years old. Formally, she is an employee of the control department of the government of mankind, but in fact the secret agent of the special department of security. The girl herself did not understand why she was telling all this, and even began to talk about her personal life. Stopped her and asked if she arranged an explosion. The girl replied that she gave the order of shelling, but she followed the instructions from above. The Sengasi project attracted too much attention and she was ordered to hush him before he gets out of control. But the guy replied that he did not care, and he did not want to listen to it. In any case, children were injured from the explosion, so she is obliged to restore everything. The girl did not understand why she disclosed confidential information, but the guy was persistent. She agreed to his conditions to restore everything she did. At this time, S.E. Ren's ship was surrounded by some strange small robots. They were like parasites of beetles, climbing into all the cracks. Songja, at that time, examined the body of Klin Rin. The body was not damaged. The brainwaves and nervous compound are normal. It seems that she just had a temporary loss of consciousness and she will soon come across. For the IOC Jin, this was just a huge relief. The official could not stand it and began to scream at S.E. Ren, asking who this guy is. But the captain said to ask him directly because she herself does not know for sure. But she first heard such a position as the agent of the secret security department. But it sounded impressive. It is amazing how at that age she advanced the career ladder, but now S.E. Ren put the girl in an awkward position. She remembered the details of her personal life and asked, she meant something when she said that she loved not touch but something else? She got angry and said, if at least something she said will come out, then everyone will be bad. But this threat was not at all scared by S.E. Ren. Then the official decided to attack her again. But at some point, a toggle switch switched in her head. She felt the presence of a huge guy behind him, and again her eyes became as if she was a robot. Somehow, Mok Jin could subjugate her mind. Therefore, he asked her to leave and remained to look at the stars with S.E. Ren. The secret agent returned to her ship. She looked in surprise from afar at the ship of S.E. Ren. She did not understand what the stranger did this fool with her. How did he make her talk about the secrets of her life? He is definitely special, but now she will not be able to compete with him, so she only had to leave memories of him and fly away. At this time, Songja said that they were already replaced by internal details with the latest models. Robert shouted that the whole ship had returned to normal. But S.E. Ren looked at the IOC Gina and asked if this was an end. The date was put in the sky and said nothing. When the girl asked if the guy liked his new look, but Mok Chin answered a question with a question and asked how she seems to her, Siren replied that she was not particularly a pathetic look, like a cheap bully that makes itself a steep. Therefore, it was decided to hold a general haircut. The guy's long white hair cut 4 hands and painted back into black. And while the procedures were carried out, the information reached 32 districts of the Dark Dragon. Its head, Ritek, was very concerned about the latest events. He just recognized terrible news. He recalled his conversation with Kim Engvoy. This girl said that the same suspicious guy may be the same person. Legends say that 2,000 years ago he voluntarily imprisoned himself in the underground stone hall of the Taishan star system on Earth. His name is Mon Chin, and he is clearly connected with the cult of the Dark Dragon. At least he called himself Beyond the Dragon, and this news made Ritek really strain. A minute later, he pressed the green button and contacted the headquarters. He requested permission to exchange information with the central headquarters. The authorities allowed and asked what information he is looking for. Ritek said to clarify if in the records a person from their cult who locked himself 2,000 years ago on the ground. Such a request was very surprised by the higher ones. But they found this person. His age was unknown, and the name was the IOC Chin. Ritek said this guy claims to be a supreme dragon. At this time, a red alarm was received. Ritek was frightened that he said something wrong. However, this was the problem of the whole planet. But the mysterious guy himself was now on the planet of the volcano. He met with Songjiang, and he said that he was ashamed that he could not protect his daughter from such horror. Mok Chin asked if everything is in order with her now. The leader of Shasan replied that they had a detailed examination, and, fortunately, she was not injured. There is still a small plus. She does not even remember what happened. But in gratitude, Songjong again invited the guy to the tea party. He added that now his daughter is preparing tea from local volcanic colors. She always brews him herself for special guests. And this time, too, was no exception. But suddenly grabbing Rin, while brewing tea, noticed something strange. Tea leaves seemed to start flying. They did not tear into small pieces and flew out of the cup. And then they spin around her with a beautiful waltz. It looked just magical and very beautiful. Songjang at that moment was on the balcony with the IOC Jin and said that the Volcano clan would close his eyes to what happened again. Therefore, he will preserve the help of a guy deep in his heart. But the shame will preserve with her. And he will be with him until the end of his days. But the IOC Jin said that this is not shame. To bow his head for the safety of his child is not a shame, but the parent's duty, especially when you have responsibility for 10,000 children on your shoulders. In this case, shame is a luxury. The leader of Shasan was really worried about his people, but also noticed that something had changed. The guy himself noticed that he had grown a lot, and this did not slip away from the eyes of others. He said that at dawn they would leave, and they better forget about each other. Songjang understood why this was necessary, although he was sorry. Perhaps he sees this hero for the last time. In respect, the leader bowed to the departing guy after. He rarely bowed his head as a leader, but this case is an exception. At this time, S.E. Ren sat in her room and looked at her reflection. Things, as usual, were a little randomly scattered around the room. She drew attention to the tape on her hand connecting the injury. Now she understood that her body was not completely her. This instant, the IOC Jin appeared in the doorway. He politely asked if he could enter. Si Ren breathed out and asked, "Do they ask such questions not before opening the door?" The guy objected that the door opened automatically, and he did not even know how to close it. Then he decided to go normally, and invite the girl to look at the stars with him. She asked why he went into her room. But the IOC Xena was interested in what happened to the Sachon clan. This question was very surprised by S.E. Ren because she hid it. But now there was nothing to hide. The clan completely broke up and everyone died. Except for it. Well, such questions were a little not appropriate, so she asked to finish this topic. But suddenly the guy asked if she wanted to take revenge? But he himself said that it was useless. However, if Seven wants it, then he can help. But the girl said that he contradicts himself. Why help in a useless business? Well then, the guy said that S.E. Ren's life is very valuable for him. This was surprised by the girl and an awkward silence hung between them. So they sat admired the view of the night city in silence. But Mok Jin suddenly added that she can start a new life only if she completes her revenge. Siren said that it is certainly beautiful, but it's hard to do because their relationship is not so close to share revenge. But Mok Chin replied that he considers himself a rather close person. In this new world, she is the only one he knows. If this is not enough for her, he can even get ghosts from the past. He still has a debt to the Tan clan. The only name from the past that he wanted to save in his memory, Tan Chan Yu. In those days, the guy did not recognize this, but he was the only one who called him his friend. He was the young master of the clan of Sachin Tan, and he owed his life to him, and Se Ren realized that it was 2,000 years ago. She said that the duration of debt receipts had long expired, but the guy replied that for revenge, it was necessary to choose weapons. For the sake of achieving the goal, you can use everything, even if this weapon pierces its heart. And if he cannot dissuade her from this stupidity, then at least he will become her blade. Siran said that ancestor will pass her great-grandfather, and if you count from family ties, it is useless. Too old duty to be inherited, but she really wanted it. But the guy told her to think, and then Se Ren agreed with only one condition. She wanted to get the opportunity to earn money for this, so they soon went to Andromeda's nebula. Their path lay for the planet of Tortug. It was always very cold there, but there was civilization. The guys came to the Wanderer's Market, where they sold combat equipment and every other trash. But the guy was surprised why there is no one here. Siren replied that it was because of their habit, because the Wanderers on this planet prefer not to stick out during the day. But you can accidentally meet with someone. Then a fight will begin, because it is impossible to take your eyes and you cannot show weakness, otherwise you can't survive. Therefore, everyone comes out at night, then you can pretend that you have not noticed anything. Then the guy asked why they were here during the day. Siren replied that they needed a person who can work during the day. And suddenly, loud steps obeyed behind. The girl turned around and said that it was he. Two guards and a young girl recognized Tan Seiran, but they met them not warmly, especially that little girl with a bandage in the eye. Siren smiled and said that I was still an old acquaintance and apparently would forever remain such a little thing. A little flying girl suddenly began to threaten very rudely. Siren dismissed and said that in 7 years she not only had not grown, but did not learn manners because at first I need to say hello. Ran introduced this little one as her good friend, and although she looks like a child, they are peers. Mok Chin replied that you could not say that they have strong friendship. Ren replied that she just loves to be angry because of the little things. She simply lent her friend an ancient fighting scroll technique of the Board of the Soul, but then she sold it, although she borrowed. After all, she needed to support her fallen lotus ship for something. The small girl was shocked and thought that Serayan was insolent. But the girl replied that she came to pay for him and returned something more valuable. But Malyavka said that this scroll is one of the greatest artifacts of ancient martial art. How did she get ready to return something more expensive? But Se Ren put up the IOC Xena forward and said that this was her gift. The guy was very surprised to hear it. The little one was also surprised. Siren whispered that the guy had already promised to help her earn money. Still not understanding the IOC, Chin looked at the captain, but he had no feeling that she was throwing him. However, an awkward silence was reigned between all of them. As a result, Malyavka agreed and led the guy to his monastery. She said that Se Ren was still alive because she believes her, but she cannot destroy her without her father's permission. Siren told the guy not to pay attention to it because the little mane actually adores her. But Mok Jin looked around and asked where they are. The captain replied that they were in the headquarters of the Three Poles, one of the 4 fractions that control Tortuga. And the father of this girl here is the main one. Then Mok Chin asked what he needs to do to help Sirayan. She replied that everything was simple. He needs to sell himself at a high price. The main thing is that he is appreciated by that uncle sitting on the throne. This man said that he was hoping to never see Se Ren again. Although he respected her, even for the sake of her he could not violate the law of the faction because she betrayed them and stole the sacred artifact. For this they generally have execution. But Se Ren said that she did not steal anything, but simply borrowed, and now she came to pay. The man said that even if she returned the scroll, this is not enough, because interest is going on for debts. But the girl said not to worry, because all her interest will be paid more than. Malyavka said to stop the chatter and cook her neck, because she is now executing this impudent. But her father said to wait and listen to Se Ren. The girl was angry for this, but could not argue. She only said, if her father lets Se Ren, then she will not forgive him for this. But he replied that even the deepest attachment could not go to the overpass of the law. Therefore, if Se Ren will not pay, then it will die. But the girl said that there was nothing to worry about. Have you heard about the combat master of Tan Sik by whom GVI? They had to live at the same time. But the man replied that he was not. And if he was his peer, then he was an insignificance. Then S.E. Ren asked the guy to show the ruler something. But he asked perplexedly, what exactly? And S.E. Ren asked to show absolutely any technique. Although no, let it be the weakest so that they can converge at a price. The guy only laughed, but S.E. Ren insisted at something very simple. Then the Emok Jin with all his might hit the air with his fist. So he froze in a combat rack, catching surprised glances on himself. Malyavka did not understand what was happening at all. Her father was also at a loss from what he saw. Is it really power? Even S.E. Ren did not understand that the Emok Jin had just shown. He replied that this was a fist of a great limit, the technique that he mastered at 1 year old. Siren said she was too weak and you need to show something more powerful. The guy replied that she was not weak, just light and vulnerable in defense, but her attack is truly deadly. Siren asked to show her in the case, but the IOC Jin replied that there was little space. Malyavka claimed that it was enough. She was interested in what S.E. Ren planned. Then her father allowed the guy to try, and at the same moment she regretted it. Behind him was a huge hole in the wall. With his fist, the guy was able to break through the whole tunnel. He struck not only the wall but also near the standing buildings. Now even S.E. Ren was surprised at this skill. Okay. Jin annoyed that he wanted to reduce his destructive power, but, apparently, hesitated from such techniques. If it was not his strongest power, then what is his power? The planet Tortug has not yet seen such a power. Her head really became interested in a warrior who is 2,000 years old. But how is it possible? How can a person live more than 2,000 years? Siren replied that she herself did not know, but this is true. She found him in the underground chamber of the Tayson star system. The man knew that closed training was being held there, but for the captain this was no longer so important. After all, everyone saw his combat skills, and they are amazing. We can say that this guy is a living library of ancient martial arts. The most important thing is quite friendly with her, if you ask him. He can dictate several ancient techniques. If you write them down in a secret scroll, then they can be sold for crazy money. It's not at all that the cheap techniques of some swordsman is a devourer. Then the guy decided to check in practice. They went to a city where there were many dangers. Here is one of these dangerous warriors approached the shop. He was waiting for it to open. But then behind me I noticed a strange guy. He sat at the table and watched him intently. And then he said that the shop would not open soon. The warrior got angry as it sounded rude. He thought the guy was running over him. But he told the warrior to relax, because he has no reason. Just let him answer him as if he was talking to his grandfather. But this was very angry with a stranger. He took out his sword. I think the guy confuses the shore. And then he attacked him and attacked him. However, the next seconds his ball was on the table of the IOC Jin. The guy said that he would return him, but he only needs an answer to the question. He wanted to know when the bench opened, but the man attacked again. However, his hand froze in place in front of a strange barrier. This guy was somehow able to recreate him around him. Then the men decided to analyze his abilities. But, as usual, the system showed nothing. And suddenly a loud scream rang out throughout the city. The Malyavka, which was owed by S.E. Ren, also heard him. She immediately found herself in the place where the IOC Jin and the stranger in the mask was. He bowed to the guy and said that he had done everything he could, but it was his first time. Mok Chin praised him and added that he cleaned him several energy channels. Therefore, he should be more careful in training in the near future. Then the guy set about food again and a little girl approached him, but she did it in vain, as she ended up in a heap of noodles at the same second. Mok Jin spit it out and said that it was muck and completely tasteless. And then he noticed that he accidentally sprayed the little one and apologized. She looked at him with a surprised look and said that her father ordered him to bring him. Mok Chin replied that saying something to the great old man back and forth is impolite, so let him come. Then the girl said that she was mistaken, and her father ordered him to invite him and show respect for his great nature. This option has already arranged a guy more. Therefore, he got up and said that he would accept his invitation. But the girl was interested in something else. They say that the guy knows all the martial arts of the world, even ancient. He replied that you can say that, and if something is not, it can be created. Then the girl asked if there is a technique that can open growth zones, but the guy, moving away, replied that this was not. So they began to return in complete silence. And suddenly the girl asked if it was possible to create a technique for increasing growth. The guy replied that this was impossible. The body is a story, and both parents and all of humanity are enclosed in it. Martial arts exist to live a life granted to her as brightly as possible, but it is impossible to go against time. Well, something seems to eat. The technique of temporary change in the body and appearance is the reverse transformation of the body, and the technique of changes in the bone structure, which affects only the skeleton. Hearing this, the girl blocked the guy's path. She very much asked to teach her this technique. Mok Jin asked what on earth should he do it. Malyavka really did not know what to answer. Mok Jin really did not realize all her desires. Therefore, the girl said upset that she understood everything. And then she desperately added that she would spend the IOC Xena. And then the guy asked if she could cook an oblong meat dish, which is slightly curved around the edges. Did the girl think about what kind of dish is this? Does the guy ask about hot dogs? Mok Jin confirmed, remembering the name, and repeated the question. Malyavka said that of course she knows how to cook them. And the following shots surprised S.E. Ren and the head of the planet. The guy was sitting and ate meat while the little one was doing a massage. However, she was satisfied and really wanted to please the IOC Jin, and he was happy to erase the hot dogs. The girl turned to her dad and said that now this guy is her master. He added that he was not a master, because as a teacher can be called the one who simply gave a couple of useless techniques. The girl's father did not find what to answer, but soon they sat down at the negotiating table. He wondered how this stranger was able to interest his daughter. He was also interested in that he was a 2,000 years. He still did not believe his eyes, although he saw everything himself. Then he said that the technicians of the IOC Jin in any case are much stronger than that of the Guardian Sword. He also heard that the guy can convey them to them. He replied that it was a trifle for him. He asked the little one to stop massaging his back, but she did not stop because she was Joy. Then her father said that the guy should convey to them the method of managing internal energy and the technique of application. Then they will forget that S.E. Ren sold their equipment. But the girl said that this would not go, because how much do not wind up the interest? They will remain at a loss. Then the man asked what she wants. The captain replied that she needed an internal energy drive. There are rumors that a man is engaged in the trade in army drives, so they should have a lot of them. There will be nothing if one is not presented, and the core class. But the man exclaimed that this is nonsense, and Seven was insolent. This is a chance that is given only once in 100 years. And even if it is an incredible ancient martial art, it is unacceptable. Then S.E. Ren put a hand forward and said that in return he would receive 5 ancient techniques. Only you can imagine what will happen if you learn 5 more of the same strong techniques. But the guy added that the past technique is generally basic and it is so. The man was in shock and now faced a heavy choice. And then S.E. Ran extended 2 hands forward and said that she was ready to offer 10 techniques. Then the man really thought seriously. He said that everything should be carefully recorded. Methods of execution, racks, and technique of movements. So in detail that anyone can master, just looking. Mok Jin said that he would cope with this and asked for paper and a brush. Soon, under a clear observation, S.E. Ren and the head of the city began to create. His drawings of the secret foundations of the Great Fist of Tai Chalk were like children's. However, movements were really painted clearly. He wrote that it was necessary to exhale deeply, to concentrate strength in the right foot, then take a step forward, simultaneously striking a fist on the target. But it still looked so strange that it was not like equipment. S.E. Ren already thought it was a failure. The local scientist carefully studied all the scrolls with drawings. He dug in each of 10, trying to structure everything. All this time, he was watched by a guard, the head of the city and the captain. Mok Jin, with a sense of duty, decided to eat. A small girl prepared sausages to him with special perseverance. Then S.E. Ren came up and said that even the cost of the paper was not pulling. Some even say that these are not martial arts, but some kind of gymnastics. It seems that it is worthwhile to increase the level to secret techniques if the IOC Chin cope. The guy replied that all martial arts at the highest level are the same, only the shape is different. Even secret techniques only offer a different approach to the development of basic movements, but the ultimate goal is one. All the techniques that he gave is easy to master, and the result will be the same, so they are even better. But S.E. Ren said that the name is also important for the goods, so she asked to write at least one secret technique. But, to the surprise of the girl, the IOC Jin refused. He may not transfer property rights with property rights even if he wants. This contradicts the laws of the world of martial arts. Seren was aware of copyright. It seems that ancient techniques do not like it. Mok Jin replied that this was not so, and suddenly asked the little one to change into training clothes. To begin with, he decided to give her the art of changing the body. She was insanely happy and immediately followed the teacher. Siren was left alone in the kitchen, realizing that it was a failure. However, a man, looking at these techniques for a long time, tried to realize whether he was inflated. In any case, these are still ancient techniques, and there are 10 of them. Siren was almost sure that her plan would not work. She said that she was also not going to impose value much because everyone makes mistakes. But the chapter was only interested in the previously unknown martial art. He saw a force that he had not seen before in his life. Siren noticed that the atmosphere had changed. Then the man asked whether Ren will be able to convince that guy to help their union. The girl replied that of course she would do it because they could not without each other. Without her, he will not even eat, although their drive should also be included in the transaction. The head thought and replied that this was possible, and then Ren was really surprised. The ruler behaved generously and hospitably because they lived there for the second day. But he asked how the girl knows that they have this drive. She replied that rumors about it reached her, and at first she did not believe, but then decided to check. The ruler replied that this is expected. You can't hide the elephant just throwing a fabric over him. Ren could not believe that they really have him. The ruler added that this is one of the 3 greatest treasures of the world of martial arts. However, there are only rumors about him. No one has ever seen him live. Ren said it was because it is very difficult to do. But the head said that in addition to incredible technologies, materials are required, the cost of which can ruin even the greatest clans. Ren agreed and added that this development requires the permission of the Central Union and should be completely transparent. This is exactly how nuclear weapons are in the past. And this is because his strength is simply amazing. And if someone tries to create his secret, he will become an enemy of everyone. Then the girl asked how he managed to create it. The ruler replied that they did not create. It itself came to them by bad luck. And then he opened the door and entered the room with a huge well. Ren asked what is internal. And then I understood everything myself. And she decided to come closer to see. At the bottom, she saw something small and luminous. It seems that there was a window inside the well. A white light poured from it. However, what was inside him was hidden. One thing can be said for sure. It was a man. And perhaps something like this is to him. He looked impressive, like a warrior in powerful armor. Then the head began his story. This happened in last winter, when a star seemed to fall from the sky. It so happened that she fell right on their city. One of the modular ships escaped from the interstellar space and sat in a cake in Tortuga. Of course, the impact power was such that the crater formed. At the bottom of his guards, the city noticed a bright light. Having looked closely, they saw a person in the armor. But it turned out that he was a real monster. The guards were about to report on him. But on that day, everyone who met him was permeated. He fell right in the neutral zone. All forces, including them, suffered losses. Only after hundreds of deaths did they realize that he was very strong. They will never cope with this monster. The reason for his strength is a special internal factor. Ren realized that this is the same translation. But she was wondering why he was there. The chapter did not know and did not want to know, because a year ago he appeared and stayed with them. One thing is clear, he is like a shy bomb. The problem is not only that he can explode, but also that the temptation of his acquisition is simply huge. The captain could not believe that such a weapon is really below. Since rumors dispersed, then all the forces of the world will be directed at him. And this is already beginning, because even Elena became interested in this. Then the leader replied that if a girl wants to get it, then let him take it. Of course, if she can convince that ancient warrior. Ren was ready for this, but not ready to see what happened next. She was dumbfounded when she saw an old girlfriend. A gorgeous, tall, long-legged girl walked towards her, and all the female charms stood out as it should. And suddenly, Sireg asked why the little one didn't say hello to her. Was she still sulking? The girl suddenly stopped, as if she had heard something wrong. And then she turned and shouted, how did Ren recognize her at all? The captain was really surprised, but she was capable of recognizing the small even in such a body. She said that they were so close that she could always recognize her. Then Malyavka asked, would she recognize her if they were not so close? She replied that it was unlikely since she changed too much. The girl cried out in response that her body was just growing too much and the clothes became short. But Ren said that it was not about clothes, but in volumes. Malyavka shouted again that if the growth zone opened normally, then she would have grown these forms herself. This is the real she, and this is her true appearance. Ren agreed, and at the same moment she easily became herself again. She looked at her hands, not believing that everything had come back. She shouted that this was all due to the fact that she did not fully master the technology. At the highest level, she will be able to maintain her height for a whole week. Siren replied that it was wonderful, but she was wondering where her friend was now. Finding the IOC Jin, she showed him the place where the same monster was located. It's simple, he had to ask for a drive module. And if he gives, then he just needs to cut and pick him up. The guy asked if this is the subject in which huge energies are concentrated. The girl replied that she did not know what it was, but probably they are similar. Its energy is somehow strange and radiates the ominous aura like the inner core of the snake. If you do not carefully try to absorb it, then you can lose your soul. Then the IOC Jin refused to go in, because if the girl just needs to increase internal energy, he will share her. Siren was surprised and flattered by such a proposal, but unfortunately, she refused it. The guy asked why she was against it. She wants energy to become stronger for revenge, then why does she not take it? She shouted that she wanted to take revenge, relying only on her strength. The guy was surprised because in such a situation it seems not logical. The girl said not to dig to the details because if he begins to delve into the logic of the leader, he will go crazy. Robert, sitting nearby, said that at one time she refused to borrow money and simply stole it. Because of this, you see, her conscience suffers less, but S.E. Ren replied that stolen money is the result of her efforts. And taking on debt is just a freebie, so the guy just has a better one to have his hot dog and not try to understand it. Robert agreed with this. If you do not try to understand the captain, then it is easier to live. Mock Jin, biting a sausage, said that if a girl is so easier, then let it be so. They will deal with everything at dawn. At this time, his scout came to the leader of Tartuga and said that the bastards from Yanghan brought Elena Palchak with them. The leader replied that this was predictably. Before everyone always runs out, they decided to finish everything themselves. Soon the rest will also begin to act. They will pull all the highest levels that they can find. And it is better for them to step aside. They will become observers who will watch how everything burns. Therefore, he ordered the assistant to remove the protection from the border of the forbidden zone where the monster was hiding. And one more thing, from now on all the warriors of the three poles go into closing. It was amazing news, but the inhabitants of Tortuga never know about this. In one of the bars of the city, the warrior decided to drink tea. But he looked strange. There was a basket on his head. All visitors looked at him with strange glances. The warrior asked why they are staring. To serve a cup of tea enlightened monk is a great honor for ordinary people. The insulted warrior got angry and immediately decided to attack. However, his attack did nothing at all. The man froze in bewilderment. Then he held out his hand to the stranger's chest. He decided to use the technique of emptiness of the highest wisdom. However, after a second I regretted it. He did not believe that she did not work. Was the Buddha Asura himself in front of him? The next second there was a bright explosion. The monk said that he warned that the warrior would go to hell if it disobey. Everyone around immediately looked at a strange stranger in dismay. They bowed their heads, and it seemed that the Buddha was pleased. He said that they should be grateful for his blessing. The modest monk asked them to enlighten him and tell the road to the Black Water Kuta, who rules Tortuga in the north. If someone knows, then let him raise his hand, but everyone was sitting. This angry, the monk, and he threatened everyone that he would send them to hell. Then all the warriors instantly raised their hands. They still did not know what a secret weapon was looking for this monk. She was hiding far underground in the dungeon of the leader of Tortuga. The monk found him very quickly. At that very moment, he began to quickly go down. Soon he saw what he was looking for. The same legendary warrior sat in front of him. More precisely, for him it was a real weapon. The monk looked at him and decided to analyze. Its internal energy was 8.9 gapsia, and inside there was a quantum drive. The monk was delighted that nevertheless he really found the heart, the core. But he did not even know what danger awaits him. He attacked the monster and ordered him to give him a core, and then he struck him with his sword. The monk was already thinking that it was all over, and suddenly a huge ray appeared from this place. It was noticeable from all parts of the city, and even Elena noticed him, who recently came here. The monk with a basket on his head also saw him. He was among this crowd of inhabitants who watched this. At the same time, all the guards were shot, following the monster. Moreover, I did not declare a commandant hour. All this reported to Jonah, covered with tattoos. He said that when the full and confusion began to happen in the world, they simply decided not to intervene. He directly heard the Mujon, the head of their clan, makes his cunning plans. Sitting in his warm jacuzzi, a full man drank tea. They asked him, Maybe this means that they decided to get out of the struggle for this artifact? Ikanjun, the head of the southern region of Totu, said that it is unlikely. The starving ones will not leave the set table. It looks like they do not want to put two sides and wait until both get tired. They need to add another character to this house. Enemies of lions and tigers, and they will be a bear. The speaker said that then they would only win if their forces still intervene in a fight. I can tell June that the world does not rotate around primitive laws. Those who want to arrange a house for their benefit can arrange a larger chaos. Enemies will not be able to manage them, and then they will have a chance. Therefore, the forces of the southern region decided to perform at dawn. Elena, of course, was ahead of them. She was already the same cherished place. She was looking for the most legendary weapon when she saw a ray. He led to the top of a huge building, and on it flaunted a destroyed man who climbed to the monster. Elena came to him and looked closer, learning in him a 29-year-old Kvan crane. He had special skills, the technique of heavenly stream and the technique of a sword of 4 streams. This meant that he was really strong, but too weak for the monster, and suddenly Elena heard a voice behind him. It was a monk's voice with a basket on his head, who said that Chomchkampa was really proud of this warrior. They said that he is a genius who are born every 1,000 years, and the main contender for the post of master of the school. How tired of these legendary schools with their showers are still tired. They tried to climb the Buddha in a bowl, and even faster than the Buddha, they received what they deserved. Elena asked why he was here, and Buddha replied that she always came to the festive table. He was very generously covered, even better than expected, and now on him his blessing. Elena told this stranger not to intervene if he does not want to die. He replied that she was an ignoramus, because how can one threaten the death of someone who has already reached enlightenment? She probably doesn't even know what it means. Elena was about to attack, but I would stop her and offered to first resolve the issue of their queue. This proposal seemed strange to the girl. If you said that I could let a small kid, I can. But he was definitely not simple. But he was destroyed with one blow. If they are the first to climb into a fight, then who would not win? He will be wounded. And against such a monster as this one, even healthy is difficult to build. Say what to say about injuries. They can completely finish. Like that boy on a pole. Well, one cannot rush at him by one, because without injuries they will not receive this reactor. Even the most stupid heard about the folk wisdom of the fisherman's benefits. So he suggested first combining his strength and neutralize the monster. But Elena sent an annoying stranger because, with the way he at the same way, she will never be. Therefore, she ordered him to simply not interfere and rush to the attack. She flew down right inside the crater. The stranger with the basket said that she was stupid and does not even know arithmetic. But he, because if she herself wants it, will become a sacrifice. And who is he to influence her? At this time, Elena landed on the ground. In front of her was a tunnel with faded light in the distance. She got up and boldly headed for him. But what she saw surprised even her. She felt the power of this monster even from afar. But next to the picture was the same IOC Chin. She could not believe that this guy is here too. She already saw him once, but this time he will remember her forever. Mom warned Elena so that she would not even dare to approach him. And if you suddenly meet, then even if it does not raise his head in his direction. If the daughter obeys her again, then she renounce her. And Elena vowed not to fight this guy. But then the MOK Jin said that, judging by the breath, fortunately, this monster recovered from the injury. Elena was surprised to hear this. The guy did not return and said that it was good that she came, he just wanted to ask something. And suddenly, something was very hard in Elena's chest. Mok Chin looked at her in surprise but did nothing. The girl bent in half and did not understand what was happening. She said Mok Zena to ask her more about what he wants. The guy asked why the internal energy of this person is distributed throughout the body and not concentrated in Dange. Elena then decided to use her scanner. And indeed, he showed that the energy of that man was everywhere. She explained that his reactor could not stand the reboot and melted. Most likely, the reason is the absence of a system that can manage a reactor of this level. But the guy said that this was not so. If it were an imbalance, he would still radiate at least some desires. But he did not feel anything in this reactor. He was empty. Words per sheet. Mok Chin held out his hand to him, and Elena immediately rushed towards him, warning of danger. A stranger touched the guy. At this moment, the place of touch began to radiate bright light. Elena even closed her eyes so as not to blind. Through the shadows, she saw that the guy was still alive. Moreover, he completely calmly watched what was happening. He really wanted to help this poor warrior. He wanted to cure him with all pain. Elena could not believe because the power of this reactor is comparable to a nuclear explosion. and this guy suppresses her with his body. Moreover, he was able to remove the helmet from the stranger. It turned out that this is an ordinary guy with glasses. Then Mok Jin asked who he was at all. The guy looked sad. At this time, an unsuspecting little one looked at herself in the mirror. She decided again to sharpen the technique that made her hot beauty. And suddenly she began to work out again. A beautiful purple light appeared from her room. And now in the mirror there was no longer a little one, but a beautiful, stately woman. And then she turned to the table as if someone was there. Then she asked if someone likes her appearance to this. However, there was nobody there except the old photo. She was wearing a little girl and a boy with glasses. She went to the photograph and asked her, or rather, the boy has on her, where is he now? Apparently, he was her good friend. But he disappeared, and they had not seen each other for a very long time. The girl was so longing that she even cried, looking at the photo. She asked him to come soon to show how she had changed because she even has no one to show it anymore. She did not even suspect that the IOC Jin just seemed to save her friend. The guy looked at the stranger waiting for an answer from him. But he continued to be silent, like a partisan. There was a complete emptiness in his eyes. Mok Jin said that his eyes are a mirror of the soul. Then why did this guy have such empty ones? Elena said that she does not catch a single brain signal, and it seems that this is due to overheating of the system. Apparently, she even burned the brain, and this is not a living person, only basic reflexes remained in him. But the IOC Jin said that if there are reflexes, it means that somewhere deeply buried, and memories. So he is still alive. But how to get rid of this abomination that captured the body of this child? Elena replied that it grew right in his heart, and in theory, you just need to tear it out. But Mok Jin did not want to destroy this guy and decided to find another way. But Elena said that there was no other way. The guy stared sadly at the saved guy. He put his hand on his head and said that he could no longer save him. But if there is something to say in the end, he will listen. And suddenly, a cough and wheezing were heard from the mouth of this stranger. Mok Jin ordered him to get together, although it was dark and stuffy here, but he should go deeper. It seems that the guy strained all his muscles and parts of the brain. Mok Jin wanted to wake him, because the more valuable the memory, the deeper it is buried. He ordered him to move until he found him. Elena realized that the IOC Jin pulls the infected energy over herself. His veins swelled and his gaze became painful. And the guy's face is opposite, on the contrary, even acquired a healthy blush. Then Mok Jin asked him if he found what he was looking for. The gaze of this guy no longer seemed so empty. A little girl was reflected in his eyes. He remembered how he played with a little one. It was a wonderful summer sunny day. They caught butterflies in the garden with a net. The little one accidentally caught his head. It was insanely fun and they played all day. It seemed that nothing could break their friendship. Well, the face of the little one has become a little restless. She continued to follow the butterfly. She sat on a high branch and it was to get it. And even now, a girl often happens in that place. They grew up, and she remained as small, and her friend grew very high. He caught her butterflies from high branches, and the little one once also wanted to become higher. She envied and told the guy to let go of the butterfly. The guy was surprised and asked why. The girl was freaking up and asked who asked him to catch this insect. She would have coped with everything myself. The guy was a little upset and trudged after his girlfriend. He asked why she was angry and what he did wrong. He was ready to improve, but the girl was silent. Then the guy asked, maybe her legs hurt, and offered to put her on her shoulders. Then the small one was even more angry and shouted that she was not a child, despite her low growth. She is already 20 and she is a girl, just a growth went late. She told a friend not to laugh from her and not to look. And until she grows up, then let him not look at her at all. The guy was surprised and wanted to catch up with the small one. But she was upset and left without looking back. And this was the last good memory that he remembered. And it was for him that he tried to catch on. He saw the IOC Jin in front of him. He was infected and his forces were running out. Well, the guy still could not say anything. In his eyes was his hated helmet. And suddenly he laughed loudly. He remembered where he found this helmet. He was in the hands of a warrior who had already left this world. But, looking closely, the guy realized that he was alive. But he said that all the other knights died, and all their opponents are also dead. Suddenly the same guy ran to the Lord. The man asked not to call him like that. If the whole order died, how can its chapter survive? And yet he was interested in why the guy was not even wounded. But he was silent because he was ashamed. The commander asked if he had hidden in battle, and the guy looked down, replied that it was. The commander did not understand, because in 6 years in the order he had never seen this guy at least once flinch in battle. He walked ahead, as if he had 10 lives. Well, what has changed? Why did he decide to convey them this time? Is this somehow connected with their task? Maybe he also wants this artifact? The guy said that he really needs one dear to him. He bowed his knee in front of the wounded commander. He understood all the intentions of his fighter, but he called him a fool because the core of drive was too tough for him. It can use it extra many absolute masters, but the guy understood that he was all the more to the commander. He is already quite high. They say that the neuron drive is rebuilding all genes, including growth centers. So he is vital for a guy to see his girlfriend again. The commander got up and said that this means that he would have to stop his fighter. He, Sir Andre Slees, 126 Commander of the Order of Star Knights. This artifact was transferred to him on behalf of, and any attempt to interfere with death on the spot. Therefore, he ordered the guy to leave if he wants to live. He did not want to believe that he would have to fight, but the commander attacked him. Then the guy brought his sword and attacked in response. This picture remains forever in his memory, and right now she was before his eyes. The infection could no longer remain in the body of the IOC Jin, and he used a mental break. Mok Chin ordered the guy to wake up, as darkness absorbs his soul. The guy shouted from the newly acquired pain. Elena sympathetically watched all this. And then again, this light again. He struck the whole city with the next ray. The monk with a basket on his head, watching this a second time, was surprised. What is it at all, and where does it fly? And then another light caught fire below. He was purple and burst out again. He flew after the blue light. It turned out that it was the IOC Chin who caught up with that guy. Buddha watched this with bewilderment. And this could be seen despite the basket on his head. Mok Chin did not even know how friends worried about him. There was a delicious dinner on the table for everyone. Robert was touched and asked how many years have passed since they ate outside the house. Songja advised him to eat slowly and enjoy because she sold 2 ventilation filters to buy it. Siren said not to grumble because this is the only luxury that Robert allows himself once a year in honor of his birthday. Robert smiled and said that he knows that they all like this food. Siren replied that nothing like that. Robert loves not at all what she likes. Suddenly, 2 comets flashed past their ship. But, the most sad, a plate with a soup fell to the floor. Robert and S.E. Ren looked at the expensive missing food. It was necessary to find out who was so bad. And the guys already, like meteorites, landed on the ground. The stranger got up and raised his sword. Mok Chin calmly sank and stood opposite. The guy behaved very aggressively. Mok Chin told him that it was not too late to fight a demon who wants to devour his soul. And even if the guy dies, he can die, a man. But now it was still and rushed to the attack. He cut the ground with his sword, but the IOC Jin did not even hurt. But even he was surprised at such a huge force. At this time, the guy began to attack again. And the Mok Jin was just turning, not wanting to harm him. The guy tried to attack again and again. He remembered when he first saw this device. He defeated his commander and opened the box. The last words of his commander was a request not to touch it. He did not blame his warrior. He abandoned the knightly oath and sold his soul to the demon. But he definitely had a reason. Because it is his favorite, the commander accepted him as a son. Therefore, he asked to abandon this thing, leave it and leave. If he decides to use it, she will absorb his soul. And if he decides to just take it away, the whole world will hunt for him. And all these ways would lead to death. And the guy understood this, but considered it his duty to give it to the one who needed it. And he was ready to sell his soul for this. And at that moment, he first touched this force. However, as already known, he could not withstand it. She swallowed him with her head and melted her brain. Now he, as if detached, attacked everyone around. Mok Jin still hoped that he would have a mind. But the guy flew on him with a new attack. Then the IOC Jin was tired and he rushed back. He ordered the guy to stop and hit him. It seems to be a slight blow, but he worked. Behind all this confrontation, a little one watched from afar. The combination of 2 huge forces created a bright light. It really was like a nuclear explosion. However, after him, everyone remained alive. Soon, Elena, who finally caught up with the guys, fell into the place of the battle, and she followed right after the trail that they left. At the stone, she saw a sitting stranger. Mok Jin stood above him, looking again into his eyes. The guy turned to Elena again and asked if this thing was stuck in his heart. Elena did not change her answer and replied that it was. To extract this, you have to destroy his heart. But Elena said that if you use a tool to extract the drive, you can get it without infection. She can do this instead of the IOC Jin, since she had this device. But the guy refused the service because if you have to take someone's life, it should be on his conscience. He must do such things himself. Elena understood what he was talking about. This guy surprised her again. Jin moved closer to the stranger and sat down nearby. That was his cargo, before that a child. He told the guy to calm down and close his eyes to fall asleep. But it was naturally painful, and he did not sleep. Jin said that his load would take his cargo with his life. He was already ready to go to hell for this, but he was suddenly stopped by S.E. Ren. Elena turned around in surprise, obviously not expecting to see this girl. But S.E. Ren, looking at the guy, recognized him. It was Umim. Jin asked if his captain knows him. Ren stumbled a bit, thinking how to say better. But suddenly she felt the presence of the one who would say everything herself. Her small friend stood behind her and looked in surprise at her friend, whom she lost a couple of years ago. And she certainly did not want to lose him again. But her friend did not seem to recognize her. She looked at Urim, not realizing what was wrong with him. Everything around them seemed to freeze. Siren explained that Urim was the best friend of Sai's childhood. They were always together, and she was even jealous, but then he disappeared. And from that moment, Sahi changed. She was cold and calm. She even began to smile, but it seemed that she was holding back her tears. It was clear that she was very bored with him. Sahi suddenly approached Urim and asked what he had done. Does he not recognize her? Was they for so long in separation? And suddenly the guy coughed again and wheezed. This is all that he could make the hut of sounds. Sahi immediately began to talk to him and asked to name her name. But Elena said that it was useless, because his brain is completely melted, and in him the memories could not stay. But suddenly, Umam held out his hand to the girl. Elena was frightened for her because Umim was dangerous. Sahi said that he still remembers her, and then she held out her hand in response. Suddenly, S.E. Ren appeared and grabbed Sahi by the hand. She said that Urim's drive housing was damaged. There is contaminated radioactive energy arising from his body. If she touches him, then she will also be infected. But Sahi said that this is still Umam, and he remembers her. Ren calmed down and looked at her friend in surprise. She released her hand and asked not to touch him anyway. But Sahi really wanted her friend to recognize her. He was still sitting with his hand outward, and the girl raised her hand again to reach out. Elena said they should stop them. But the IOC Jin said that they could not, because some connections cannot be destroyed. And suddenly a spark ran between their hands, and Umim sharply slammed his hand into his fist. The girl scaredly began to call him by name, but he only cherished her back. What he spoke surprised everyone around. But unexpectedly behind the Sahi, a spear stuck into the ground. It was already familiar to some flag. And now the spears began to fall one after another, like arrows. And then something huge, similar to a nut, arose on the ground. Siren asked what is happening at all. Elena shouted that this was a barrier. Jin struck him, ordering to disappear. He was able to cut the barrier into pieces. Around the dust pillar immediately rose, and near the stone where Umim was, a burning note flashed. Elena and S.E. Ren looked closely and saw a sign. He was with the same cantica as on the flag. Chin said that it was an Ormorical arcade from the formation of Shaolin. And then he asked if there is anyone here who inherited the martial arts of Shaolin. It should be a master close to the sphere of transcendence. And then Elena remembered a strange stranger with a basket on her head. It seems to be the work of their clan. And the stranger was at the headquarters of the Blackwater faction. He prayed, and behind him was a huge lotus flower. Suddenly, he felt someone else's presence nearby. He turned to the Buddha who came from hell. Buddha suggested waiting a little more, otherwise they themselves would go to hell. And then Amitabha Buddha will receive her payment. He scanned Amitabha, sitting nearby. It was a stately, tall, and strong man. Buddha realized that his soldiers left him alive in order to pay off the debt. Someone big with huge pockets where the entire amount will fit. And then Amitabha came to Buddha very close. A man with a basket of Ra's head was a dwarf compared to him. He was the emperor of the eastern heaven. Buddha bowed and said that they had not seen each other for a long time, and the elder was surprised that the stranger knew him. But Buddha replied that it was better for them to pass by each other, as if they were not familiar. But Amitabha asked Evil to answer correctly, and then with a click of fingers he directed his crushing energy to the Buddha. But he survived, although it was not easy. His legs were imprinted in stone land. Amitabha recognized the technique of Rui Vajra, which means that in front of him was one of those damn monks Shaolin. Judging by the strength, he was a stubborn student, and only the elders know such methods. But there was one talented boy who served next to the great elder Milanchun from Shaolin 20 years ago. It must have been he, And the Buddha replied that he warned that they had familiar communities. Amitabha replied that if the Buddha is the same student, then this gives him the right to survive. What is behind him is the same drive. Therefore, Amitabha will allow him to live for the sake of Milinchen. But the Buddha did not move, and the man thought that his life was not at all dear to him. But then something made him be surprised. Buddha held out his hand. So they both froze in bewilderment. But the Buddha said that Amitabha owed them 85,000 loans. Amitabha thought that this boy is crazy. How can he threaten the higher Buddha, who has already lived this life? But the Buddha replied that Amitabha was already old to threaten him. Then, the man attacked him, but the guy used the rebound technique. A fiery fist pushing to the side crashed into it, and then an explosion was heard against the wall. He was so strong that he broke her. Amitabha was sure that the Buddha was over. He complained about the old Milinchen, who incorrectly raised his dog, but he himself wanted destruction, and he simply satisfied his desire. He already reached for the flower, the reactor, but suddenly his voice from behind ordered him to stop. And then he said that the account has not yet been fully paid. Buddha appeared from the fire and dust, who survived. He suffered greatly but withstood the blow to prevent his own. How could he survive after such a blow? It was amazing, but the Buddha stood opposite. Moreover, he again held out his hand forward. Amitabha said he was a crazy bastard, but he repeated that he was waiting for the return of debt of 85,000 loans. Amitabha replied that according to the rules, since the initial contractor who paid the deposit died, the contract may be cancelled. But Buddha recognized Amitabha as a contractor's successor. Then the man got angry and knocked down the boy from his feet. He pressed him to the ground and ordered him to continue to speak. But he replied that he would say if Amitabha repaid the debt. And then I decided to attack in response. He grabbed the hand, pressing him to the ground and released energy. Amitabha recognized this secret technique forbidden even in Shaolin. She carried the energy of the unorthodox path and was dangerous, which means the guy broke his vow. But the guy replied that martial arts are in any case intended for murder. Well, as expected, something like Eon Prajna would not work on the elder, since he has an indestructible body of Vajra. But suddenly, Amitabha interrupted the guy's power and pressed him to the ground again. It was a terrible and strong blow. Then the man asked, "Now there is a monk, what to say?" That time lay in silence. But suddenly his hand rose again and stretched forward. The man got angry with food stronger and continued to strike. They continued for a long time, one by one. Soon everything was subsided, nothing was heard from the outside. The weapons buds stood silently, losing the owner. Red liquid oozed to them. And suddenly they flashed with green fire. And this happened while Amitabha continued to strike. He was all in red liquid but did not stop. Soon, the basket on the guy's head was too struck. Then he got up and shook himself, saying that every monk reaches nirvana. And suddenly he felt something strange. Behind him, the lotuses began to burn with green fire, and soon they disappeared altogether. There was only a piece of paper with signs. Amitabha recognized Seaman Dunjia and caught her. It was definitely a trick of the Buddha that has not yet died. Then the man decided to eat this piece of paper. So he was able to dissolve with the flowers, and the monk remained there. Most likely he has already left this world. And soon he was found by Elena, Ren, and Mok Jin. Siren asked who destroyed Asura Buddha and stole the rest. If someone was able to do this with Asura, then he is definitely a cool master. He could be the emperor of the Eastern Heaven. But then the IOC Jin said that the Buddha did not die. Siren was surprised because she saw the guy's body with her own eyes. But Mok Jin said this child has incredible talent. He is seriously wounded, but still alive. And if so, then the IOC Chin asked him to answer, where did the rest go? And suddenly Asura's hand reached out. He did it again as then. But the guy was interested in where Sahi and Umim had gone. They had a general memory associated with a butterfly. She sat on a tall branch and suddenly Urim's fingers grabbed her. He caught an insect by the wings, and then he showed him his girlfriend. Sahi held out her hand to give her a butterfly, and the guy crouched to do it. The girl looked at her with a fascinated gaze. Umim asked why Sahi had such a face. Doesn't she like butterflies? She replied that this was not the case, but that the butterfly does not fly away. It seems that all this is not true. Really, they are in some kind of simulation? Umam replied that the girl was right because his chest does not hurt. Previously, she burned like a fireball, but now everything is in order. He asked Sahi not to cry because they met again and should be happy. But the girl replied that she was afraid that this was all a dream, and she would wake up again. She sees Urim every night and is always afraid to wake up. After all, RNA will lose it again, and suddenly the guy's sad. He apologized and said that he also always thought about Sahi and remembered his childhood. She has always been more mature and smart, despite her behavior. She replied that she behaved like a child, but Umam said that it was not a height, because she was very sweet. After many years of travel, he was convinced of one thing. There is only one pack of Sahi in the universe. And that's why he always loved her, so he brought a gift. He knew that Sahi did not want to be low, but the girl shouted that this was not the point. Her growth was not a problem, even though Umam always encouraged her and said that she would grow up soon. But suddenly Sahi looked at her friend and was horrified. He shone again. His evil energy returned to him again. He saw that there was a person in front of him. It was Amitabha, who teleported here. He immediately used the scanner to check everything around. The guy had a powerful internal energy with a maximum of 8.9 cycles. But most importantly, it had an activated quantum drive. He was looking for him because he wanted to get this power. But unexpectedly, Umam attacked him. Sai tried to stop him, but in vain. A bright blue flash appeared in front of her. And at this time, the Buddha was still pulling his hand. He did not give any information, only pulled it. And then he suddenly uttered the amount of 85,000 loans. Siren asked what he was talking about. Mok Chin said that about money and asked Se Ren to pay him because after that he deserved it. The girl was horrified because she will not have such an amount even if she sells the ship with Robert. And even if she adds to this list of Elena, the amount will not exceed even 10,000. Elena immediately got angry because of such a proposal. But the IOC Chin interrupted them, thinking how much it was. Then the guy vowed with his name that he would then return this money. But the guy under them was still silent. Siren said that she would never give this eager demon of money. And suddenly a red fountain poured from the basket on the monk's head. He painted at the top something like a circle. And soon the red spots converted into a drawing hint. A real pentagram towered over the guys. And they, like Amitabha, moved directly to Sahi and Urim. Sahi watched as a man grabbed her friend. He appeared as if from nowhere. Then he grabbed Urim and lifted him above the ground. He coughed, but did not inflict the injury to Amitabha. He said that Umi was in vain, underestimated his enemy. Even despite the fact that he absorbed this power, nothing means. His body is too weak to control this, and he is not the only one who has a drive of the main level. Therefore, Amitabha was going to pick up the driver Urim. But Sahi had a different opinion on this. She was ready to save her friend at all costs. She loved him, so she attacked Amitabha. But the shockwave flew to the side. And then, like a ball, she hit the ground. In the end, she flew far away and fell. Rising, she began to call Urim. She madly wanted to save her lover. What Amitabha was doing now was horrified by her. The man held out his hand and pierced Urim with her. Sahi could not do anything else. Her strength was not enough to at least do something. Amitabha pulled out the very device from the guy. It glowed and radiated deadly energy. But suddenly Amitabha felt someone's presence. The man turned his gaze behind his back. He saw a pictogram and 3 people who had moved to her. These were Se Ren, Elena, and Mok Chin, who saw Urima. He lay on the ground and did not move. Siren Sawaza attacked Amitabha and ordered to move away from Urim. She immediately released energy into the enemy. Energy almost overtook Amitabha, but he moved. And then he sharply waved his hand, releasing fiery energy. With her, he with an explosion reflected the blow of Seiran. It was a fiery fist that blocked energy. He struck her and directed his fist in Se Ren. The girl froze, realizing that the matter was bad. And suddenly a male hand touched her back. It was the IOC Jin, who defended the girl. The fiery fist split into several parts. Amitabha was clearly surprised. He did not believe that Se Ren would repel this blow. But it turned out that the IOC Chin simply gave her a little energy through the touch. Amitabha was surprised at such powerful energy. This guy used energy transfer technique. Suren said that in front of them is the Emperor of the Eastern Sky. Elena added that he is an incomparable master, known with her mother as one of the 5 supreme masters of the world. In the entire galaxy, there are less than 10 warriors who could compare with him in battle. And he decided to analyze the stranger with the help of the scanner. But, as usual, there was no data about the IOC gene. He does not have an internal energy drive, which means he is just a person. But how is a person still capable of using the internal technique of energy transfer? Mok Chin said that the body of Amitabha is solid, like steel. And he saw that he mastered the technique of iron fabric. External martial arts and techniques usually require a person to tolerate severe physical pain. Therefore, the majority avoid them. but Amitabha coped well. He would love to defeat Amitabha, but unfortunately, he does not have enough good reason in accordance with the rules of the military world. Therefore, he will give Amitabha a chance, and to put what he holds and leave while he can. Amitabha in response said that the guy is just crazy. He was not going to obey some boy. But suddenly Mok Jin came up and delivered a normal blow to his stomach. It was unexpected and the blow seemed simple. But in fact, a lot of power was concentrated in it. The guy said no longer to give him reasons to fight. It is better to immediately fulfill the conditions and give up. But these speeches only angry Amitabha more strongly. He flashed with fire full of hatred. Mok Jin said that he was better off to stop. But Amitabha asked, "Is this not what the IOC Chin wanted?" And then with all his might crushed the chip in his hand. Elena and Se Ren were horrified because he destroyed the driver. And then Amitabha threw him into the guy and said to take him. But the Moki Jin hit the man again, only in his face. It seemed that the blow was ordinary, but he was again incredible. The guy brought a fist over him again. And hit again, only in the stomach. Amitabha did not fly aside but felt severe pain. And then again, one by one. He got what he deserved again and again, until the guy inflicted the last blow to him. After him, everything around became dusty. Se Ren and Elena watched this battle for a long time, and suddenly the icon which transferred the guys here shone. Mok Jin stared carefully at her, and then he saw a huge man in front of him. His face was beaten but his body was burning, and then it suddenly collapsed loudly, like a closet. Seren continued to watch it in surprise. The only tree that stood in this dead field was a haven for one pair. Sahi sat under him, laying Urim on her knees. He lay with his eyes closed. Sahi looked sadly at this exhausted face. Se Ren said they need to approach and help her. If they leave her in this state, then she will sit with him until the end of her life. They must pull it, even if you have to use force, and then she will never lag behind the body of Urim. Then Mok Jin went to Sahi and told her to step aside. But the girl did not move and did not react in any way, but the IOC Jin said that he would still allow her to say goodbye. And then he sat down and began to share with Urim energy. He wanted to give him a chance to say goodbye to his lover. This is the only way she could leave calmly. Elena and Se Ren still did not know what the guy was going to do. Se Ren asked what he was doing. Elena said that he was trying to use the return technique on the guy. Se Ren looked at Elena in surprise because it seemed impossible. Iesna said that this is a state of unity with nature itself. Nature gives the beginning of everything around. Even the cycle of life and death is laid down by nature. Elena thought this condition was just a legend. Who is this amazing guy, really? He directed his energy of origin to launch lifeless bloodstream. He lent Urim his life so that he would finally enjoy the moment. He wanted him to say goodbye to his love for the last time. Sahi saw Urim sitting in a flower field and shouted that she was ready to fulfill absolutely everything for him. She burst into tears, but Umim began to calm her. The girl looked at him in surprise with her eyes. Umam said that Sahi looks much more beautiful when he smiles. He wiped the tears of the girl with his hand. He said that he did not want to cry with her. And Sahi said that she no longer hides her beautiful eyes. The girl regarded this as a request and took off the bandage from the eye. Elena asked why Sahi wore her. Did she really hurt her? Se Ren replied that everything was in order with him, just so she wanted to look stronger. Suddenly, Umam grabbed the girl's face with his hands. He said that she was insanely beautiful, and it was always like that, and then gently kissed her, looking into the blue eyes. He wanted to do it for the last time, and then he asked to forget him so that it was easier for her. So Umim and fell asleep with an eternal sleep, and the place under the tree became special. Sahi will often come there to talk there with lost love. The girl was watched by her friend, Mok Jin and Elena. But now it was time for friends to fly away. Se Ren told everyone to hurry and fly away. She wanted to get out of here as soon as possible. Mok Jin stood at the window of the ship and thought about the conversation. He remembered that Sai finally asked him about one thing. She asked to take her body transformer technique from her. Mok Jin replied that she could leave her with her, but the girl said that she would never use her again. But the Moka Chin replied that they could not be able to use and not be able to use are different things. That is why Sahi should keep the equipment with him. So she will know that she does not need to change herself because she is always beautiful. And after that, the guys sat on the ship and flew off the Cordy. And at this time, the swordsman of the West was talking with Amitabha. She entered the hall and saw many bodies, including the body Ikanjon, and Amitabha sat up at the top. Kim En-yu said that he still had not changed. He used his students as victims to let off steam. They probably called him here to give him a disc of the main level as a gift. Amitabha replied that they were not his disciples because he only taught them a few tricks. But they were still not particularly useful, so they were garbage. Manhwa said that she was amazed, since the famous Amitabha survived after that. The man said that it was better not to provoke her, but Enha said that he did not understand anything. She is here only to warn him. She told him to stay away from the IOC Jin, since he is her victim. If he ignores it, then next time, she will not be so good. He will not even save his iron body technique. This technique is really very strong. But this technique always leaves one hidden weak place. So why did the MOK Chang Yu knocked all over his body, but left his left forearm, which is his vital point, not touched? Maybe he wanted to continue to beat him, but deep down, he actually did not want to kill him. Now, if Amitabha ignores her warning, she will first destroy him without hesitation. So the swordsman left Amitabha alone in an empty room. And at this time, the SE Ran ship was heading for his goal. Mok Chin, according to his own old custom, erupted sausages. He, as usual, ate a whole baking sheet. Siren, who was sitting on the contrary, said that now that the main disc was damaged, it would be better for her if instead she received internal energy. She decided to let the guy give her inner energy, but only this time. But the IOC Chin replied that it was too late, since his internal energy was spent to return the soul of the child. To restore it, he will need about 3 years, but SE Ren clearly did not arrange such an answer. He promised to help, but now he left them with great debt Asura Buddha in as many as 85,000 loans. And if they do not pay him, Asura will pursue their eternity. Asura was now at the local tax, where he was told that, including 100,000 loans, the total amount is 103,040 loans. Asura Buddha asked to transfer all this money of the Shaolin faction. The guy was surprised and advised the Buddha to leave a little for himself to survive. But Buddha said that he was sure of his decision to take care of the elders, and he himself could simply steal what he needed. At this time, the news about the IOC Jin, concluded on Mount Tai, reached the heavenly sect of demons. Her leader was unhappy that the IOC Jin called himself a heavenly demon and used their techniques. His guard replied that he would conduct an investigation, but most likely this scheme was invented by the highest in order to weaken their sect. But the leader replied that those techniques were a secret for 2,000 years, even for the elders of their sect. So how could the higher forces find out about them and use this VOC Jin? It can only be a transformed demon of their sect. Therefore, Vai Sochin, the 94 supreme demon of the sect, turned to the guard and made an assumption. Most likely, the third heavenly demon has appeared in this world, and even from so much there is always a lot of trouble because of them.